I'm Clint, and welcome to Swatch's Art Livestream number 75. We're blessed to have Anna back with us again this week. She is joining us in audio only this time, but over from Germany. So Anna, how's it going?
Hi everyone, very well. How is it going over there on the Great Island
The Great Island.
called America?
Well, everything's a little crazy over here right now, but I suppose it is in a lot of the world. I spent
Yeah.
most of my day working on the plumbing from the new house, so very,
Mm.
very fun stuff there. Okay, but it looks like we already have some people in here. Hey, good to see everybody. Thank you for taking the time to come by. How about Noah? Hey, Noah, how's it going, man? Good to see you. Noah's a local fella. And Michael, good to see you guys. So, this episode, we're going to be taking a look at the submissions for the art challenge that we kicked off 2 weeks ago, the Swamp and Last Stand challenge. And Anna, you've had the chance to go out there and already look at some of the images. Any initial thoughts that you want to share?
There were, I think, 10 out of 12 people submitting. I think that's a really good number.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a great variety, and I'm really looking forward on having a look on these with you together.
Yeah, I completely agree that there is a lot of variety. Even though everybody was working off the same prompt, it is very different things that they came up with. But actually, a lot of the same issues to discuss as far as people, I kept seeing a lot of the same sort of concepting problems coming up. So we're going to be hitting on those topics several times, on the same things multiple times. Now, if you have questions for Anna and Anna is also the moderator out on the Facebook group, so you've probably chatted out, there with her before. If you have questions for us and want to toss us questions during the live stream, feel free to put it in the YouTube live chat. Particularly if you can put @swatches at the beginning of the comment, just to know that it's directed to the channel and to me, and we will try to get it, answered during the part of the program. You're saying that her audio sounds a little low. Let me move that up. I'll move that
Last
up
time
for
was a
you.
little bit loud.
Yeah, we
Test,
were picking
test.
up a little background audio hum during the test, and so I tried to turn it down to negate that, but maybe it was a little too much. So I'll turn it up, then we'll see how it goes moving. All right, I want to start by just going over some announcements and notes. This will give people a couple of minutes to join into the live, and then we will start looking at the images and giving feedback for those who have submitted. All right, let me jump screens here. Go. I'm out of the way. So, in case you're wondering, the art challenge is a ticketed challenge. That is, there is limited spots, and the people who have submitted that you'll see in their artwork, they have bought one of the 12 tickets that went on sale 2 weeks ago. And in 2 weeks, we'll be kicking off a new challenge. Once this one finishes, we'll do a new one. And if you're interested in joining in the challenge, you'll need to pick up a ticket for that time to get reviewed. Now, if you're just interested in being a part of the challenge just for fun, and you think you want to give it a shot, even though you won't get feedback from me, then you can find a link to all of the files and the prompt out on the Facebook group, which is swatches.group. And you can just go download those for free and have fun. And be sure to, share the concepts and images that you make from that out on the group so that we can all see what's going on with it. Okay, like I said, Anna's joining us, or Anna, as you actually say is the more correct way to say it.
Both okay.
Online workshop discussion. Yeah, I want to talk about that. I had put a post out on the group asking you guys if I did a 8-week online workshop, what topic would you want to be covered? And we had a lot of responses, over 40 replies of people kind of outlining what they would like to take a course on. And I read through every single one of them, And it basically came down to two of the most popular. But three, I'm actually considering doing three of them. One is a fundamentals course. And that would be covering, okay, let's learn perspective and proper shading. Let's understand how values work separate from shading, colors, basic anatomy, just the fundamentals of drawing. We've got a lot of people out there that are sort of skipping that and they don't really know what they need to learn about it. And so this may be a prerequisite before taking some of the other courses if I find that you haven't already covered it. The other two were basically mood. And under mood would be covering how colors affect images, how to work with colors, how to get more out of them, how to understand them, how to use composition in your images to get what you want out of it, and also working with with the values and just the design of the image. So all of those things work together to create a certain mood or energy or point in the image. The other one is a start to finish workshop, whereas essentially you are doing a portfolio piece. We start with the prompt, we start with just the concepting phase, and we work through every single step along the way. And at the end of the course, you have a finished portfolio image. And we just, take you through the whole thing. So, between those two, Anna, which one would you personally be most interested in?
Oh, both.
Put you on the spot. You didn't know that question was coming.
No, but you must also tell the others that you already have really, really nice material on mood with lighting and color on your Gumroad,
Yes.
because these are amazing. People should get them first.
Yeah, I do. If you haven't been out to swatchesart.com, that's my little Gumroad online store. And it's sort of what funds this whole channel and group. I do have several ebooks out there on creating mood through composition, through color, and through lighting. And the other one, I have a painting process where I get the painting process and break it down to 10 steps, and we talk about what to do on each one. Essentially, what I'd be doing is getting both of those materials, expounding on them, and then creating homework and providing feedback on that homework and turning those into proper courses. But it would be based on the fundamentals that I teach in those topics. If you want to know what I basically would say and what my approach would be, then you can go check out those materials. With the mood course, we would cover lighting and colors and composition, but there are a lot of other things that go towards building a proper mood in an image, and we would be getting past some of those and adding some more topics to that. So if you are interested in either one of those or have an idea for a different course, feel free to go back to that comment list in the group and put your idea down there. But what I want to put to you right now, and I'll probably put maybe a poll out on the group about this, is there's a couple of different ways that we can do a workshop, and I'd really be interested in doing one. We could do it where it's very mentorship-like, where it's basically one-on-one. I'm working with you individually. We're meeting for a private one-on-one video lesson every week for the 8 weeks. And I'll probably be providing some recorded lessons, but then we would meet up to talk about your homework and expound on the lesson. That would be fairly pricey. That would be running around the 1,000 range for one person with like 2-hour video chat with me every week. And there are some people that absolutely they want to go for that, and that's cool. Some people that's a fair bit outside of what they can afford, even though it's sort of replacing having to go to college or university. The other option is to do more of a classroom environment, which would be probably 5 to 10 students. I haven't really decided. And that way we would be reviewing multiple, the whole classroom at the same time. We're looking at 5 or 10 images, and giving feedback on those. So it's a little less time per person, but the cost would probably be about a third. It would be somewhere in the 300 range. So let me know what your preferences would be, and also just put it down into the live chat, and I can come back and review it later during the, after the video has been posted. Do you have any opinion on that, Anna? We hadn't talked about that, but when you have to compare a one-on-one mentorship with a higher price point to a more of a classroom with a lower price point, how do you weigh that out? Do you have any preference?
Well, I think especially for fundamentals, a classroom scenario would be a really good thing because people could work together and exchange and help each other out. And if you have something very specific, like I struggle at this and that point when you're already a little bit more advanced of a painter, then it would be probably better to go on a one-on-one mentoring with the artist that you are admiring. Yeah.
Okay.
That's my opinion.
Well, let me know what your thoughts are, and then we can just move forwards in that direction. Oh, one last thing. I thought of it just earlier, is maybe doing a crash course workshop where it's a weekend. We're doing 3 or 4 hour live stream private lesson for the class, and then you have that afternoon to do your homework, and then we come back the next morning. So Sunday morning would be the second day, then we do like another 4 hours of streaming, and then you do your homework, and then maybe Monday I would do just a review of those final things submitted. So it'd be like a really condensed, a lot of time right there on the weekend in order to try to, I don't know, just put together a whole image over the course of like 2 days. But I thought that might be fun as well. So if you like that idea, let me know. And I'm trying to go more this direction with the Swatches community and not just YouTube videos. I like interacting with people instead of just making videos and uploading them. So if you haven't already joined the Swatches group, you can see the link right there, swatches.group. It's over 4,000 members. Great place to get some feedback, constructive criticism, and options and links and all kinds of things to help you grow as an artist. And if you like the stream, if you like what we're doing here, if you enjoy some of the feedback, if you found anything that we say here helpful, then leave a like and leave a comment below about what kind of stood out to you or what maybe the stream has inspired you to try. So, all right, let's take a quick look at what the challenge was. Let's take a look at the challenge outline. We won't read over the whole thing, but you can pause it there if you're watching it, and you can read it all out. But essentially, the artists have a choice between doing one of two totally different ideas. One was the Swamp Shop, which is a fictional location in a sort of D&D fantasy medieval location, where this turtle, this humanoid turtle, has a little shop out in the swamp. The other one is Last Stand, where it needs to show a sci-fi hero who is fighting against some alien serpent things. And it's fairly broad there. What kind of sci-fi hero? It could be everything from like an android or Master Chief to, a pulp fiction astronaut. So all up to them on that one. And now, here were a couple of the references that I had pulled together. The location where we're looking for no background. This would be something that might be used in a book. It's fictional. It's not actually going to be used in a book. But it would allow the book publisher to put it on whatever background they wanted. So it would be kind of a standout of the image. And it should be very clear what it is and fairly well lit. We're not looking for like a super dark image. These were just ideas for the action of the sci-fi scene. These are obviously not sci-fi, but that's what we're going for. The main thing with that image was just getting the energy of the fight and what's going on with the struggle there. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Unless you have any more notes, we can start taking a look at some of the artwork.
Yeah, let's go for the first one.
Okay. I had downloaded some other images there, but we'll jump in. We're just going alphabetically. Oh. Now, I've already come in here and jotted down some different notes. So we will just be talking through these. That's a little small. Let me size him up. All right, this one is coming in from Andy. You didn't list your last name. Also, Andy, I've got a note here for you. A little note for you. This was well past the deadline. You actually put it in the finals folder rather than the concept folder. So by happen chance, I noticed that it was in there. Just going forwards, make sure that it's in the right folder and by the deadline listed in the paper. I'm not going to be able to guarantee that I'm going to be able to review it if it's not on time and in the right folder. The deadline is at noon, at least my time. And so I usually go grab the images at noon, and then I don't open that folder up again because I'm then getting ready for the stream and writing down all my notes and gathering reference images. So if it's after that point, there's a good chance I'm not going to see it. That's just a little side note, but that also applies to everybody. So, okay. His notes down here is, "Hi, Clint. I think it departed a lot from the World of Warcraft aesthetic I was originally going for. Now that's imposed on himself. That wasn't part of the outline. If you have any suggestions on getting back to that aesthetic, it would be much appreciated. I think, if I'm honest, I ended up derivating from my inspiration refs and ended up with something quite generic. Oh yeah, I have some other images on right now that he did not have. We'll talk about those in a second. Something generic looking, but still very happy to have completed something. Okay, so here, I can definitely understand where you're coming from as far as, yeah, it feels a little generic, but you know what? I totally understand what I'm looking at. And as far as a concept, I think it's a very successful concept. And it's more about getting more out of the concept than necessarily like restarting. I do, like you did, a variety of different studies here. Not real big on the color studies, but I think there's more important things than the color studies right now. Because it seemed like you are struggling a bit more with getting a solid concept and a concept that had the right aesthetic. And that's what we're trying to achieve, and before necessarily we start worrying too much about the colors. All right. All right, first notes here is, I need to pick a color that's not the same color I'm trying to write on. There we go. We don't have any actual references. I mean, you have some inspiration images. That's cool. But this is something that you really should be able to go out and find some photo-real references of shacks out in a bayou or a swamp. You should be able to find photos of big, gnarly tree roots going out into the water. You should be able to find some sort of raft platform from some movie that is similar. Those are the sorts of things that you need, because those are more grounded in life than just basing it on artwork. Because what you're doing is you're making a separation between, you have reality, and then you have artwork, and then you have your concept. And we're getting too far removed from that original. So you're basically basing yours on somebody else's artwork that was based on reality, or maybe theirs was based on somebody else's artwork that was based on reality. And we want to make sure that, yeah, we can take some inspiration from other artwork, but we also need to make sure that you are basing yours on a bit more reality as well. All right. What was your thoughts with this one? Anything strike you with this image, Anna?
Well, the first thing I thought is a little bit the shape. shapes and forms in this one,
Mm-hmm.
and the composition. These are the 2 points that I first thought about this painting. For example, when you look at it, your view goes up to the left corner, to upper left corner, and there's nothing to see. So he leads us out of the picture and not into the middle of it, where we have the subject that is
Mm-hmm.
important. So I I I changed something about the tree and the angle and the shape of that tree where the hut is sitting on.
Mm-hmm.
I really like the fence or what this is in the background. This looks really really nice. A really nice idea.
Oh,
Um,
of the sort of sail fan thing in the back.
yeah, I think it's a really nice idea.
Mm-hmm.
So um, you can also use this really well for leading the viewer's eyes. But just the tree is a little bit throwing me off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you. I made my notes this time all in the form of icons and scribbles rather than actually writing things. I'm enjoying that. And yeah, we're actually hitting on two of the same points right here. So let's talk about that tree. The tree is really drawing our eye out of it. And yeah, the concept is that this is a sort of a standalone image like you see, on one of these. But we also understand that, if this was properly made into a game or whatever, that maybe that would continue off. Oh, that actually reminds me that I need to turn my phone off a moment. Sorry about that. I tried to remember that beforehand. So with the tree, what are some options we could do? Well, one of the things that I was thinking is, why don't we get it to go the other way? And I think that that would make more logical sense if the tree was leaning this way, right? Then it would make sense because from a side view, the tree is leaning here and you're actually building out underneath it, right? And so you're getting the protection of the tree coming out over you like a cave. And so that would be kind of cool. And that would also make sense as far as kind of at least keeping your eye in the same page area. The other thing, which I had the wrong panel open there, something else you could do is to basically not make that into a full tree, that it is just a giant stump that sort of broke it off right there, right? And so it's just a big stump, and then it doesn't really lead anywhere. And maybe he's built something inside of the stump, or maybe there's just other, little trees growing out from the inside of the stump. And so it can bring some more vegetation around there, and you still have the giant roots that go around the building, but it's not imposing on the composition as much. The other thing is, I'm going to talk about the eye level. Like, if we look at the references, you notice that these eye levels were set all at normal human eye level. That if you were in that location, you're seeing it from that, about 5.5 foot level where you would be with your eyes. With yours, we're what, 20 feet up? I mean, we're way up looking down on this thing, and it's not a great angle to see it because we're only getting the roof, really. So I would consider using the basic idea that you've got here, but changing the eye level. So instead of looking down on it, we're kind of looking into it. And that would obviously require a total rework. Applying the same ideas, but it could be a total rework. Shape wise, yeah, I'm with her. This just isn't very interesting. Although there are things that we can do with it. And one thing is that you could start turning it into multiple layers. So instead of just one kind of fan shape that's going around, you start doing it like, well, this one comes up like this, and then there's another level of it up here, and then you start sort of staggering them so that they, connect to each other. And then maybe there's another one that sticks out here. Maybe there's a, kind of like what you have with this one. And then maybe that one goes back over this one. And then they start connecting in, and they have multiple levels of them. Maybe this one, only goes back to here. Then it has a pole that comes out. And this starts adding more complexity. And if you're going to keep the same camera height, then that makes sense, because you're actually bringing up some of the roof up towards where our eye level is, and it doesn't seem as odd. Okay. As far as the Warcraft aesthetic, did you have any thoughts on that, Anna, about how to get more of that feel?
Well, Warcraft is a specific kind of shape language.
Mm-hmm.
We should then go get some references, look what shapes are being used for the Warcraft paintings, and also a kind of rendering. They have some are a little bit more, well, not so fine brushwork. There's often a little bit more patchy. I don't know how to explain that in English, but a little bit more, more energetic way of rendering. So just get references to some studies and see what you can change. Get some elements maybe that they have in their huts and buildings into it. Yeah, that would be my ideas.
Here are some references that I pulled up, and I'm completely with you. They do have a different style of shapes, and that's probably the biggest thing that is going to separate the two aesthetics. Is you have a fairly realistic approach right now, and that's fine. You can start with that. But Warcraft has an exaggerated way of handling shapes and forms, that people don't just have, shoulder armor. They have massive shoulder armor. And roofs aren't kind of pointy, they're really pointy. And you want to look for these sorts of changes. Like, look at this is a Warcraft concept art that I'm not on a high enough level to, there we go. Layer wasn't on the right level. That if you look at the roof, it isn't straight. That would be a real normal roof. No, Warcraft is the ends stick up. Not only do the ends stick up, but they also stick out. And they have this really severe angle, and they taper down. And then this one angles out, and this one angles out with that little bit on it. And you can look at these shapes. Just the little tiles on the roof, the shingles. It's not a smooth edge like you would have on a normal roof. No, each shingle, you can see the massive steps for it. So that's kind of what you want to look at with yours, and that should get you quite a bit closer. So if you're looking at, say, this spot here, you don't have this. That's what you have now. That would be something you probably find in the real world. No, you've got that, right? We're looking for that sort of change, where this edge is going to be hanging out, and it's further up. And then you've got more lean to this post that's sticking out here. And then you maybe have another post that sticks out there that's the sort of rib, underneath it. And then it's hanging out this way. And then maybe this one has two posts kind of holding him, and one of them sticks up. And then that one has ropes tied around it. You're trying to exaggerate it and make it more wobbly, bigger shapes. I'm with Anna. This thing, I'm not entirely sure what the sail thing is. I'm getting the idea that maybe he's, using pieces from a boat. But I don't really see the functionality of it. Could you turn it into some kind of mechanism? Could there be, even if you just put a big gear back here, and then it was tied to some sort of pulley system, then you get the idea that somehow this thing uses the wind, or maybe there's a little, maybe he has some goblin tech back here, right? And he's got some weird windmill thing that sticks up out of the top of it, and it has a sailing, fabric back there, and it sort of comes out here, and he's got some smoke pipes sticking out. And so you can see that this is like a little factory sort of thing he's got in the back. I don't know. I'm just trying to play up the shapes to make it a little more interesting that way. This was kind of what I was talking about. Changing up the shapes. See, watching how this is really good. I don't know who did this. I just pulled it off of ArtStation. The way that these interact and sort of loop in and out of each other, and they all have different kinds of curves. Something like this too, where it's a repeating pattern, but it's not a perfect repeating pattern. Some are taller, some are shorter, some lean out more than other ones. There's multiple levels. I think something in that range would really suit well for your concept, Andy. Okay, well, we got 11 more to look at. So any final thoughts on that one, Anna?
I think you pretty much covered everything.
Okay. That was concept art. That was also kind of cool, just as far as a lot of different cool textures going on there. Then all the posts in the water, holding it up out of the water. That could be something that really worked on this one too. Is if it wasn't quite right in the water, but you had all those piers going down. And maybe this back part's on some sort of land or on that tree, but the rest of it isn't. Okay, we will wrap it up on that one. Andy Aslamov is the next one we're going to take a look at. Let's make him a little bigger. Go ahead and read his comment. He says, the idea was to build several levels of a read. First, just a cool, mysterious android fights with serpent aliens in front of the portal with timer. The pixelated effects of blood and sparks should tell the viewer that she is literally a character in a game doing a classic time quest to protect the gate. The last stand here means the last and the hardest wave of monsters. She slides back and smashes the monster that tries to sneak to the portal. She has an allied shooting drone. Her design and color studies are unfinished. There's a top left front spotlight and a side rim light. We can see a really excellent pose reference here. I'm assuming that's him.
Yeah.
And then we've got kind of a lighting face angle reference there. And we see some League of Legends artwork here. And I don't know who did these, but those are good action scene references.
From a Chinese artist, but I can't recall the name.
Yeah, I think I've seen their stuff on ArtStation as well, but we had several different concepts. I like the concept you chose. I think it's reading pretty well. We did some lighting studies. You did some lighting studies up here of the top light being really bright and then sort of just a fill light. And then you have the brighter background and playing around with different ideas for the portal. Okay. With this one, anything stand out to you on this that you think would improve the image, or does anything really catch you off of something that would need to be fixed?
So the first thing that I thought was, of course, what you already mentioned, that is really, really good that he's taking his own ref, that he's taking a photograph, because many people are using 3D models and they end up with a really stiff pose.
True.
And he's really, every time he takes part, he's doing such amazing refs. So keep doing this. For the painting, I think it's a really ambitious angle and perspective and very tricky to pull off. I think there are some slight things. The anatomy is because of the movement a little bit off, and the silhouette gets a little bit distorted, especially by her hair. That's the first thing that I thought, because the hair is so full and thick, and you can't make out, if you just see the silhouette, what her arms are doing. And the other arm is also really hidden behind her and also really high, at a really high angle. So first I would work on the readability of this painting. Yeah, those are my first thoughts.
Okay, I did have a little concern about the hair. I'm sort of split because hair is one of those things that it's sort of like this reference image here with all these ribbons of fabric going around. It's a really good indicator of motion, but it can also not be good for keeping things simple. And I'm with you that the hair probably isn't helping it read real well. You either need to figure out how to make the different shapes read better, or consider giving her shorter hair. More like what is that, Riven? Probably some version of Riven in the game.
Yes, that's
Um,
right.
or like some sort of mohawk thing. I yeah, even it's even catching me a little off that she's got this just beautiful full hair, but she's everything else looks completely cybernetic.
Yeah.
And there's a those little discontinuity there.
Mm.
So yeah, I'm almost thinking that she should have more of the shaved hair on one side of the head, and then it's kind of like this almost semi mohawk thing. It
Yeah,
would
or
probably fit
like
the
he has
aesthetic
in
a little
his,
better.
sorry, or like he has in his sketch, like this Sailor Moon like braids or something like that. There's also,
Mm-hmm.
it still has the dynamic, it's still long, but it's not so much throwing off the silhouette.
Yeah.
Mm.
Okay. Uh, this piece can also live and die by the way the anatomy is working and the pose.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure that that is really nailed. And I got to say, I'm with I'm with her. This is an ambitious one, and I don't say that to say not do it. I said go for it. But
Yes.
and I think that this is perfectly acceptable for a concept. And now that you've got a good idea and you're working from it, we need to we need to refine it and make sure everything is really squared away as far as the anatomy and the composition and the lighting. And that's where we go from now. So you are where you should be at this point. And now let's look at improving some things. I want to think, yeah. So this is a little thing I came across online. I came across it on Pinterest. They didn't have a name listed. Credit to whoever made it. Um, Line of action is something that we're seeing here, and it's also something that a lot of the other artists in that we're going to look at here is going to be relevant to them and their image. And we really want to make sure that the line of action is good. It's basically the motion of the action of the character, and you want to build everything around that. And so once you have that line of action, you kind of feel like you know what the character's motion is, and then you build a simple skeleton to kind of place out where the joints are and where the arms and the legs fit to that line. And then you can do a 3D simple form version of a skeleton, and then you can fill it out with all your details. And that is honestly a good way to approach this, and it would be quite similar to the way that I would approach it if it was me. So you've got this great little reference photo here, but I think we're getting off some on the line. So let's get this layer up here. Oh yeah, this was another one. I forgot I had this one put on this layer. This is another example. This is Inzio. So I pulled it off of, again, Pinterest. And this is where a lot of the different poses are. Yours is much more dynamic than this, but a lot of the ones that we're going to look at is this sort of thing. It's fairly static. It's fairly straight on. And, I mean, it's not anatomically wrong. It's just not very dynamic. And you can see by turning her and adding that twist where, like, the chest is going one way, and then the hips turn back, and then the shoulders and the hips are also tilting different to each other. And you're adding bends, you're adding curves that are built around this action line. What they're calling the dynamism. Kind of a hard word to say. And again, the action line there, you can kind of see what's going on with it. And that's what we want to make sure that we're accentuating in your pose. So your pose has, there. Your pose has this one. That is the most powerful line of action in this pose. All of that. These are the secondaries. These are just to make that one work. Right? Otherwise, he'd completely fall over if that leg wasn't there like that. And then this one also sort of makes its own coming this way as well. And so that's what we want to translate. Right now, yours isn't quite there. You've got like up, over, and you've got more of this wide, like the legs kind of make their own, and then these don't quite flow. Yeah, and you can sort of see the difference there, right? So what we're going to look to do is tweak the pose so that you've got more of that line running through here. Instead of this leg arching up, we need to make sure that that nice curve is continuing all the way. And then we've got the curve of the shoulders, where that back shoulder is going up nice and high. And you notice that we lose almost all of the neck. So, got the head here, and then that back shoulder is way up high, and it's coming down. Coming forwards, and that's pretty good. You might even accentuate the size of the hand a little bit more. If you're going with like a League of Legends style, yeah, I'm like, if you look at the perspective on this League image, like this sword coming back, way back there like that, and then just a lot of foreshortening going on there. So with these, we're looking for this. And then also watch how far this leg is coming out. Because we don't want to create a new line for it. We want it to be more like this. We want it to be part of what's already there. So it's coming out, and then it's actually coming back. And we have it doing something a little odd there. So make sure that you're watching that line of action. Also watch some of the different sizes. Like the head is looking quite large compared to the torso. And if you look at, compare the size of your torso, obviously we're talking about a man to like a female android or something. But still, we're going to have a rib cage in there that's probably a little bigger. And then we're going to have a big curve here. Then the lady should have bigger hips and a more accentuated hourglass, and we have like an idealized android symbot or whatever. So we're going to have this. And then that leg is going to be dropping down more. Right? And we want to have that. So it's kind of telling us maybe even more. And then the front can be basically straight. And then that back side is going to be coming down to it. That one's pretty close. But we need to have this coming back this way. And here, it looks like you're playing with the shoulders a bit. We need to overlap that shoulder there. That shoulder's going to look a lot bigger here. And you are having that hand out. Might put that hand a little bit higher so that we don't want to change that curve up too much. If we have this arm coming out here, then it creates a little more of an S thing than we need. Probably better to keep it a little simpler. We might just change the angle on that a little bit. Okay, that would be how I would approach the pose, and we just want to tweak that and get that a little better. Like we said, we might just give her a little bit more of an edgy haircut. As far as the snakes and the scene, did you have any observations on that, Anna?
Well, it depends. He wrote that he wants it to be like one of the most powerful monsters, and I wouldn't read them as very powerful because they're tiny and thin.
Mm-hmm.
If he changes his mind on that, to have it like being minions or something, I think it would be more fitting.
Yeah.
Or lighten up the creatures. Yeah, have it maybe wrap around her or something in the background. You see it from one side to the other or something like that.
Mm-hmm. That was my impression as well. They don't seem that threatening. There's two of them, and she's already blasted two, and she's got a shot for a third unseen one. Um, the gate. I'm gonna suggest making some tweaks to the environment. The overall design of the character, I think, is working. It's a cybernetic lady with laser hands and stuff. But with the snakes, they just don't seem. I don't know. They don't seem that threatening. One thought was even making them mechanical. I was kind of thinking, what about if it was like robotic? Some sort of mechanized snakes would kind of fit well. But you can keep them this way, of course. One thing that did bother me was we see her foot this close to that gate, and then we're supposed to have her arm all the way out with a staff extending from there. And there just isn't enough room from here to here to have that arm all the way backwards with a staff sticking even further back. So we've got to add more distance between where her foot is and where that gate actually is, which isn't that hard to do because we're so low on the perspective. I mean, we could just set it back to here and all of a sudden we added 10 feet, right? But we also want to move it over a little bit. See, if we have the gate more here, we have it centered on her side, it makes it feel like she's protecting the gate because it's on her side of the image. And instead of having the gate all the way out here, what we can do is just have it just past half point. And then it's like here, and it's almost all on her side. And then we can have the edge of the platform, if you want, coming out here. And then this is where you can see some of the daddy snakes. I mean, the big snakes are starting to come up from behind and around the platform. And then these little guys can be the ones that are kind of coming in first, but we see the massive ones coming up from space. And something else here is, if you look at, let me get that out of the way. Like if you look at this image, which character that is, anyway, this league image, foreground. Having foreground, midground, and background can be a really good way to help bring depth in. And we don't really have that. The foot is kind of coming to the whole foreground element, and that's cool. But having like a snake coiling up here, then coming back, that would also really help give the idea that they're encroaching on her, and they're maybe even a little bigger than what we're kind of perceiving them as. Oh, and with the lighting, I would really suggest thinking about having mainly two different colors. Like all the, she needs to be either one, warm or cool. Then they are either the opposite. Or she needs to be blues and they are violets. We want to have a clear, this is, aligned with her and everything else is aligned with them. So if she is using orange, then this gate should probably be orange. But if we have the gate blue and then the serpents are kind of bluish, it makes me feel like she's trying to take the gate from the serpents. So align the colors of the lasers and, the serpents and the gate and that sort of thing with the side that they're from. Okay. I think we're good here. Any thoughts on this one?
No, nothing from me.
All right. And I'm probably going too slow, aren't I? Because we have 10 more to look at.
Wow.
Okay, we'll speed it up here.
We can do it.
Andrew Doris sends this one in. He says, I went with a group instead of a single character. Hope that's okay. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, you're expanding it out. That's cool. We'll actually have that. We'll take a look at that in a minute. But let's run through the different options here. One of the first things I see is positioning of the characters. I feel like they wouldn't all be able to stand that close to each other. I mean, I get that we're standing close to each other, but I don't know how her rear and his leg occupy that same area. They would just be, yeah. So I think we need to spread them out just a little bit so that I can believe a little better that somebody's back is not actually pushing into somebody else's back. So probably not a big change. I assume that you have those on different layers. And oh, I was a little surprised that you didn't go for one of your other ideas. I definitely, I guess with this concept here, I feel like a lot more of the canvas is being used for the narrative of the scene. We've got the two characters here, and then we've got all the snaky things coming around them. And then we've got some gap area around them, but that negative space is needed in order to create that oppression, that surrounding feeling. That's cool. This one has a bit of a different feeling, but again, like if you had cropped down on this, and then had all these things coming around here, I feel like that's probably a lot more dynamic because we're down at their level, and I feel like I'm part of this scene with them if I'm down on their level. But here, I'm not really that concerned because I'm up out of the action. As a viewer, I'm looking at this in basically as a third person. It's the difference between playing a first-person shooter and a third-person shooter. In a first-person shooter, you're them. You're down in the action. Third person, you know, it's not as emotionally connected because you're just kind of observing what's happening to somebody else. What was your sensation on that, Anna? I just felt like maybe this one wasn't as dynamic as some of the earlier concepts.
Yeah, so I jotted down that it looks very static. It's a static situation. It's very centered composition, very everything is totally even and repetitive. So the snakes, the sizes of the snakes, and the space between the snakes, and that makes it a little bit, calm or less energetic. This painting, and also that there are 4 people, which is a very stable number with in every direction. So there is no threat for them, to be honest, because they have all eyes on every side. So in the composition he did in his first sketch above, where he just has 2 people, they have to turn around and look around, and from what side are they attacking first? But here, with 4 people, they're pretty safe, so they can see where the first danger is coming from. That's what I also thought. If he's going for that, so if this was his intention, I think he can make a good piece out of it. But I also had composition 3 picked as favorite, with a low angle view and a little bit more cropped in. But it's his decision, but my personal liking would be composition 3.
Okay, well, in this case, I think it's best to actually answer it in 2 different ways. And so we can do this quickly. We can talk about if you were to go this direction with it, how can you make it more successful with what it is? And then B, if you're ditching this idea altogether, then what would you go to? And if you were sticking with this one, then I'm with her that you might want to take out one of the characters. 4 is very stable, and they've just got so many guns, nobody has to really watch anybody. And they don't have any blind spots. So, like, if you took this guy out, I think that would actually improve things. Or almost probably take out anybody but the guy, lady on our side. And that would actually improve things. The snakes, I'm with you, Anya. on a, they're too repetitive. It's fine. It was like they're all from the same species. Okay, cool. That's fine. But they don't all need to be the same size coming in at the same curve. So instead, if you had fewer of them, but you had more of this, okay, this thing is coiling around, and then we see coil, coming up this way, that's overlapping that one. Then this head comes out from underneath it, and it's here, and you see just a bit of head from that one there, and then you see a coil coming around this way. And so you start using a lot more of the body, and then you just occasionally put in a big head. And this one doesn't need to be straight to us. That's super static. And so you can have like a really big head coming here. Maybe it's even closer to the camera. And so, yeah, a lot more of this serpentine. Like, look at a photo of a pit of snakes and just kind of look at how they all twist around each other. And that sort of thing would help give a sense of motion without necessarily reposing the main characters. And that's one of the things that I came across in some of the reference images, and I wanted to look at those. This is a comic page I came across. I don't know who did it. I was just searching for action poses, where you have the character not really moving. Sorry, it's kind of a bit gory. I mean, I guess that she just sliced them up like crazy. But you see all the action of what is happening. And so it's similar in that you can start making all the snakes move, and it gives a sense of motion without them necessarily moving. The other thing is, are you actually having them firing right now? Because if you are, then you're going to have weapon blast, and you can have, snake heads having holes blown through them, and you can have dead snakes where they've already been fighting for a while, and their ugly little snake tongues are hanging out of their mouth because they're already dead. And they were just trying to defend their little baby snake eggs, and they came over here and started killing them all. That wasn't very nice, was it? Anyway, so yeah, are you having them shooting right now? Have they already been fighting? Should there be other humans that are already dead laying on the ground? Because that would give me the idea that it hasn't started yet. If they're not there. Or is there is there humans hanging out of the big serpent's mouth? Has he already taken out, a whole battalion of them, and you've got like legs sticking out or something? It's a little gross, but we need to convey that most of the guys are already dead. These are the only ones that are left. The only humans left. Okay. Otherwise, I'm with her. I'd probably go with composition 3. I think it's really dynamic if you want to start a new piece. Do watch the angles on these. We're basically seeing both of these guns directly from the side when we should be looking down on them at a distinct angle. Where I should be seeing this gun and this arm at an angle. Like if it was a cube, I'm going to be seeing it more like this. Not a complete side view. Because I'm not seeing the top of that, and I'm not really seeing the end of it. So we need to make sure that both of these are in distinct volumes. So check that out. Okay. This was a similar image, probably the same artist, might even be from the same book, I don't know. But I thought it was kind of cool. The idea being that you've got this, in a comic, it's one character moving down through the page, but you could treat it as if it is these soldiers who are making their way through this horde of the snake things. So they're working their way through, and they're blasting away in front of them, trying to, just punch their way through the numbers of them. And so you still have them in the middle of the scene. You still have all the snakes around them. But now we've got a direction, and you don't know if they're going to make it or not. Okay, I think that finishes it up here. Do make sure you do some value studies to figure out how you want to light this thing, because with this and many elements, it can be pretty problematic. It is probably a good idea to go with something simple, like, there's a light mainly here in the middle, and then it gets darker as it goes out. It's pretty straightforward, but that could work. Also, if you lit it so that only the gunfire is the light source in the scene, and everything else just has this like dull moonlight, that could be cool as well. All right, you get no final comments on that one because we're moving faster.
Okay. Go.
Okay. Now we're moving to these. Let's open them up. Do we have any comments or questions from the chat? Did you notice? I haven't really been watching.
Well, there were some questions right at the beginning. The first one was about whether or not you're going to make another grayscale to color video, because that person struggles with that a lot and didn't get it right from your video that you already posted. So do you plan on doing...
We certainly could. I hadn't have it planned on the schedule, but I will keep it in mind. Yeah.
Another person asks whether what you think this coronavirus is going to do to concept art industry.
As far as different industries that are going to be hit hard, I don't think concept art is going to be a big one. A lot of our industry worked remotely anyway, so it's mainly the concept artists that would be working in-house, like, say if you're working at Blizzard, that they would have their in-house team of concept artists, but obviously they can't really meet now, unless, I guess, everybody has their own office or something. So I've got some friends that do a bit more of that sort of thing. I haven't talked to them about it, but I don't think it's a reason to, not continue to pursue it if that's a career that you're looking at. I know a lot of artists do concept work from home, and I reckon that will continue. I am more, well, actually, I guess looking at a bigger picture, movie production concept art, I could see really going down because they've stopped making movies right now. If you can't get actors and directors on sets to film things, movies aren't made. But video games, not quite the same way. You do still need people in meetings and working things out together, but not probably to quite the same degree. And you can probably get more done remotely on that than you can with a movie. I'm making a little guesswork here, but yeah, I think it'll still be there. I just think the industry for a while is going to have to make some adaptations of kind of the workflow of how things are done. Fortunately, it's an industry that has already made use of kind of remote working to begin with. So if it goes forwards and I hear some, or if I talk to some other guys on that topic, and I wouldn't mind discussing that maybe in a future video if I see that there is major. I'm trying to move around this chair. This chair is so uncomfortable. I keep saying I'm gonna go get a new one. I keep not doing it. Yeah, well, that's my thoughts for now. If I hear something more, then I'm happy to share it with you. Okay, this is Gared. I'm going to take a shot at that. And but welcome to the challenge. I don't recognize the name, so I don't think that you've done it before. Welcome. Let me pull up a little bit more so people could see that. And I had a couple of reference images there. So, notes here. You just said, do you have any tips for drawing multiple objects in perspective without going too technical. Yeah, you can definitely get really crazy with trying to just run lines for everything, and it can get really hard with round objects and spherical objects. But just having some simple guidelines in the image is usually a good idea if if you like the concept. So once you kind of define, all right, this is the scene I want to do, then start running some of your guidelines and make sure that your perspective is accurate. And if you're working in Photoshop, that could just mean making a new layer. And I'm going to just grab the line tool and I'm going to make a series of lines. I've done this before, but if you haven't seen it, then I'll just walk through it with you. These will just be my guidelines. So we don't actually have our eye level in the image. So I'm going to basically base these to what you already have drawn. So those are all in one layer. I'm going to run a transform, Command or Control T for transform. And then I'm going to rotate these until this top one matches the top plane that I see, top angle that I see on that awning. And then I'm going to turn these until they get somewhere near the table. Pull that out. That looks pretty close to the table. I think you have maybe a curved table. I don't know if you just curved it accidentally or whether it's actually a curved table. But I'm going to say that that's pretty close. Anyway, it would be along that lines, and then you could just set that to multiply or screen or whatever you need for your particular one. And then that's just going to help you make sure you keep things in basic alignment going forwards. Another thing that you can do is actually draw cubes around the objects in a second layer. So if you're thinking about this thing, you could just draw a cube that follows the perspective that you just made. And the cubes are pretty easy to do if you already have your lines like that. And then you can kind of think how that sets in that cube and does that feel right. And you could even do the same thing for him, thinking, okay, well, he's setting in basically a big box himself. If you ever watch Super Annie videos channel, Master G videos, and he talks about thinking about things in terms of cubes and inside of cube volumes. And that can also help you kind of work out the perspective with them as well. Or start with drawing it in its most basic form. So just draw it as a cylinder first and then modify it. Don't try to draw it as its final thing to begin with. All right, as far as this scene and this submission, what were your thoughts on this one, Anya?
Yeah, the perspective was also the first thing I thought. I wonder what happened to the other two sketches that he did, because the first one I really liked, and I think it was a really nice composition he did there. He decided to go for a close-up. If he goes for this close-up, then it will become more of a character design than a landscape design, and then I would put more effort into the tortoise. I don't know, is it turtle? Is it tortoise?
Turtle.
Turtle. To make it look like an aged shop owner with having a lot of items and little things hanging from his body. And I would go a little bit more crazy on the design then.
Okay, I do have to note that this is a charming, what is developing to be a charming little piece with a fun little character, but it's also not what was asked.
Yeah.
And I've said before that these art challenges, one of the main reasons I do them is to give people an idea of what it's like to work on an actual commission. I try to run it in a very similar way. You would have a similar amount of time. You would send in a concept or a sketch to get feedback, where you could be asked to do iterations, and then you would send in a final. Then I could also ask for changes there. So I'm essentially serving as an art director. And if this was sent in, and if this was a D&D commission for the new book, it would be rejected. Not because it's not a fun character, it's not because it's not a charming little image, but it's not what was asked for. And if the whole point of the image is to establish the environment of the shop, and the character and the details of what is in the shop is secondary to the location itself. The shop is the character. And so I'm going to challenge you to go back to one of your earlier concepts. I'm having a little harder time understanding what's going on in concept 1. It looks like some sort of cave, maybe. But concept 2 is actually falling pretty closely to what we have, outlined in the brief. Some sort of little, looks like what do they call it? Pagoda? Like a little pagoda? With a rowboat there, with those little shops and doodads hanging around. That's actually really close. I'd say go back to that and flesh that out. But then, after you do that piece, come back and do this piece. This is a fun little piece, but we've got to make sure that it's fulfilling what the client, what the brief is requesting. Because sometimes and I will speak from personal experience, there are times that I have taken liberties with some elements of a scene, and because I didn't really think that they were that important. And you usually have some creative license. And then once I sent it in, the art director was like, okay, no, actually, it's really important that this has to be this way. It has to be of this particular color because of this other reason. And the art director isn't always going to tell you all these things. They're not going to give you, a 10-page background history of what's going on with this shop and explain to you why it has to be the location and not the character. That's not their job. That's not in their purview. So on this one, I'm going to challenge you, please go back to one of your earlier concepts, develop that for the scene. Remember, you don't need to do the environment. Background needs to be blank. And then go on from there. But as far as the character, if you go on and develop this scene on your own, which I hope you do, because I think it's kind of fun, I think actually having a curved desk is kind of cool, because it follows the idea of, all the curves of being a turtle. And so if you had like a wraparound desk that kind of went around like this, and it went, kind of like this sort of thing, then that would be fun. That would be a little different. Also, make sure that you're using some photo references of turtles. So here's a guy. I uploaded this photo and some other photos. I took a number of photos of this fella when I was out in Kauai, and I have put them in the Art Challenge folder, the open folder, where I say, hey, if I got more files, I'll put them in this link. I put them in that link, so you can go get them out there if you want. Anyone can, you're welcome to. And so, looking at the shapes sort of going on in that and adapting those. And also make sure that you look up some market images. Like I just looked up, I think I looked up Moroccan market, and I came up with this photo from Google. And this is a nice thing to get started with. Kind of looking at the bright shiny gold and lots of stuff hanging down and lots of different bright colors. And that could be a really fun thing too. And those are all things that could be added directly over to, a concept similar to that. And, all kinds of different little brass lanterns and colored flags and carpets, and maybe he spins his own, wool or something and makes, blankets out of it, or I don't know. but you can make it colorful and fun that way. Any more thoughts on this one?
No, I'm fine with that.
Okay.
I think we can go to the next.
Close that one down. Fergus Russell is the next one up. Zoom up on that one. And I had some references. We'll talk through those once we get to them. Now, okay. Fergus did not include any comments. All right. So let's start with your observations on this one.
With my observation, okay. I loved his reference pictures. It was very brave. No, I really like the composition and also his brushwork a lot. This is one thing that stood out to me immediately, because he's quite loose, but still sharp and readable. So I think he's doing very good on this. This was my very first impression of that painting.
Yeah, so a good first impression. You thought it was fulfilling stuff pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now, we actually have Russell, Mr. Russell, in the comments. So, hey, if you've got comments or questions that you want to toss to us about your piece while we're talking about it, feel free to put it down there, and she'll take a look at it and keep an eye on it and pass them along. So, my thoughts as well were, it's fulfilling a lot of what we're asking for. I particularly like the designs of the snake things. They feel appropriately snake but alien.
Yeah.
And I think that's working good. They also seem like they are a real threat because the dude has hatchets fighting these things. But I don't feel like it isn't a sci-fi scene. His gear makes it obviously look like at least modern day, but probably more sci-fi. So that's all working well. And yes, I'm with Anna. Reference photos. Thank you for doing yourself a favor and taking good reference photos. That makes things so much better. So, what's working? What can we improve on? Well, there were some things going up here with your concept that I sort of liked and not really seen in the final. I want to feel like maybe this had a lower camera angle. And again, that's something else that I'm sort of getting thrown off by a little bit is, again, we're sort of removed from the image. And where's the references? I downloaded a number of Frank Frazetta because I had cited him as somebody that you could look at for like the action scenes. And let's look at his real quick. Oh, this actually goes to the other art piece that we talked about earlier. If you look at that, you're having a group of people together, right? And then the nice bright lighting on that, and just the general sci-fi background to it. Of course, this was a book cover wraparound, so that would have been the front and the spine in the back or whatever, however it worked. And so anyway, that was kind of cool. But for the action scenes, this one, look how much action is going on at that pose, right? You've got a lot of motion going on. That foreground soldier with the blood, with the smoke coming out of it, the bullet hole. This is such a good piece. Such a good piece for what it's trying to do. And the energy of the smoke coming out and the planes flying over and the guys charging in the back. I mean, what can you say? And there's so much energy and motion going on with that. I kind of want to pick up on that. Another thing here, really clear silhouettes. Obviously, he doesn't have a background, but Frazetta was really good working with those silhouettes. Like, look at this thing. Look at that guy, the silhouette. You don't have to have any details on that guy to know what's happening. The silhouette itself is enough to tell you. The silhouette of the tank is enough to tell you it's a tank. It's enough silhouette that it's such a good silhouette that you could tell the building in the background, the tank, the angle of the tank, and the falling guy and what pose he is in if it was just white and black. So that is something that we need to pay attention to and try to get as well. Again, silhouette. There was a reason that Frazetta often put his heroes and his struggles on the tops of mounds. The silhouettes read so well. And that's one of the things that I'm worried about here, because we don't have any good clear silhouettes. We're going to have to be really clever with the lighting for it to work well. The other thing is the pose. While this is an action pose, it's also static. His arms are completely straight across. His legs really aren't moving. I mean, he's leaning forwards. But he's not trying to move forwards. So basically, he's just square with both legs out and both arms out. And it's not very dynamic, which is kind of odd because, it has a lot of energy. But what we're going to be looking for is probably something more where he's actually in motion, where he's moving. And there's a difference between those. Those were some of the images. This was an example of, I didn't make this. Somebody had good and bad silhouettes. This is an excellent silhouette. You could probably figure out who that is and what the pose is by just the silhouette. This wouldn't be a bad silhouette. It's too ambiguous. All the arms and the legs just kind of make a big blob. And by having good negative space around the pose, it helps it read better. This is that same scene where you can have the action going on basically all around the character. The character is fairly static. And that makes me think, all right, if you're going to keep basically this same pose, that's not what I meant to do on that letter. If you're going to keep basically the same pose, then something you can consider is having it where he just finished this double swing thing. And his axes, you got this blue on the end. Okay, well, what if they're electric sci-fi axes? And he's just done this double swipe where you still have this electric trail in the air following where these blades came from, going around, right? And it's kind of smoking ozone electric trail with little particles in the air and stuff. And then you have this thing's head that he's just clean severed off. And so you have smoking blue stuff coming off of where he severed the head off. And then you've got this lopped head up here, right? I guess it would be red because it's all bloody. He just lopped the head off. Right? And then you're doing this sort of thing, right? And then its mouth is like, oh my gosh, I just got my head cut off. I'm sure that's what alien snakes think when that happens. Gotta be. That's what they're. So anyway, and that way you're actually trying to make it have a bit more of a time scale to it, where he just cut it, and so that makes sense of why he's in that pose. Well, we can also just adjust the pose slightly so it's got a little more curve to the arm. We can get a little more bend at that elbow so that it's not a perfect straight line. So it kind of comes back like this, and he's kind of charging forwards. And then this one comes back. A bit more like that. And you can see with that has a slightly different feel to it. And then I would consider having him like charging forwards or jumping back instead of the legs being side to side. They're more like, this sort of thing, or he's jumping forwards and the legs here, and then it goes back, sort of that way. That makes sense. That he isn't waiting for them to come. He's taking the fight. Again, if you can get that silhouette to read well. Something along that lines. Then that gives him in motion. One of the simplest things that you can consider as far as motion with character is imbalance, right? You have character on ground, completely balanced. But what happens if character is pushed over? Now we have imbalance. Now we have motion, right? And this is a really key thing for getting motion and action in those sort of scenes, is don't let people be stable. They're always falling. They're falling forwards, they're falling backwards, they're lunging, they're jumping. They don't have their feet completely planted. Right? And those are things that we can see in his work, right? He's pushing forwards. He's off of the ground. He's in motion. He's pushing. This guy is literally flying in the air. This guy is charging forwards. That foot is not planted. Right? Everybody is imbalanced, and they're trying to get to some new position. They're not in the position, they're getting to a position. We see that in our other images. Take a look at some of these. These are just other ones I pulled off of Pinterest. Look at that, imbalanced. His legs are not firmly planted under him. They're off to the side. That's something else you can do is that's why you need that line of action. The line of action allows you to imbalance the character in an organic, believable way. So watching that line there, some more on this one, like this sort of thing. So like if you had your dude in a pose similar to that could really work. And then he could have his double axes out instead of, pulling a sword. And that could be really cool. Came across these Spidey ones. Just really good sense of form, but exaggerated form, and also no features, right? No mouth, no actual eyes. I mean, you have the exaggerated Spidey eyes, but you get a lot of attitude and a lot of demeanor from just the pose. Some of those were really fantastic. Other things, Norman LeMay has done a series of these that I would suggest going out and finding on Google or Pinterest or wherever. He talks about a lot of different things with posing, and this is a good place to start. It's not based on the anatomy. It's based on the gesture. This is where gesture drawing is really good to do. So you start by trying to do this exaggerated kind of cartoony gesture that tells you everything you need, and then you can kind of dial it down a little bit to being more real. He's got another one. This one? No. This one, just another line of action. Yep, using that to create motion. Did I not put it in here? Oh no, here it is. Yeah, this one's a really good one because it shows kind of a before and after. Push it. Push your character, posing, using line of action and a clear silhouette. Here's just a taste before getting into it. So yes, somebody doing a sort of bridge thing, and then no, really pushing. Now you feel the energy. Clear line of action. Pushing it. Punching. You don't show the punch actually hitting the person. You show the follow through and you show the other person bouncing away from the impact. Scared? Not really. That's scared. That's creeping. He isn't just bigger, he's looming over. He isn't just, confident, he's really confident. You can exaggerate these sorts of things. So that's some things to keep in mind when having to do an action scene and trying to push those a bit more. That isn't necessarily all just to Fergus here. Some of that's, across the board to everybody. What else? Go back to other things. Yeah, it's this pose right now, and one of the reasons I suggest having either he's kind of jumping backwards where his body would be doing this, right? It's going to do that. He could be doing that saying and trying to jump out of the way, or he could be, trying to charge forwards, and we already kind of talked about that. He's doing that sort of thing. Is that it breaks it up from being a flat plane, because essentially right now he all exists on one flat plane, and that's just, it's not real interesting. So you can have it turn to you or away from you rather than that. The other thing we sort of already talked about is, do you want to try to treat it as a silhouette? I think you can make it work this way, but you got to do something with this down here. So this scene can work the way it is, but you've got to tweak his pose, and you've got to make sure that the lighting is good on him. You could even think about putting some unseen red light source like down underneath here, and you have this bright red sort of glow kind of under hitting him. That's just going to accentuate some of the tones going on. And then that would just sort of add to the feeling. And I know maybe he has a ship over there or something. You don't even really need to explain it very much. Yeah, and if you do use I just sliced the head off the snake thing, then, you can have snake blood and little tendrils and stuff, going around. And those can also help add to the overall action that way. And, if he's just killed this thing, then yeah, it can be bleeding out. It's something I think could be working on this one is having water. So if he was actually, all of this was water. So he's, I just think like it would make it even more, terrible that he's in this situation, because he's like trying to work through being in this grimy, it could be even like a swampy sort of thing where there's like all this swamp moss and stuff going on, and these things are coming up and out of the water, right? And you got this ugly, murky water down here. Anyway, that's an idea. Any final thoughts on that one? I've been rambling for 20 minutes. Sorry about that.
Yeah, you got carried away. That's a really good piece, and I'm looking forward what he decides to do.
Okay, well, we'll wrap it on that one. Appreciate it, Fergus. Looking forward, seeing what you come up with on your final. This one is Daniel. So Daniel said the idea is the astronaut is getting some illusions of a puppet snake's attacking him because he is about to die of suffocation somewhere in outer space. Daniel, you probably know what I'm going to say. And I wish you didn't make me have to say it. Kind of gone off the reservation, bud. But let's actually talk about that, because it is an issue. It is an issue that every artist has to walk on every project that that they're doing for an art challenge or doing for a client. And that is, they hire you to be creative because you are creative, because you can render this scene. And so you have an amount of creative license. But where is that? That's a little nebulous. Like, where are the boundaries of that? And when does it apply and when does it not apply? And well, there isn't any hard, fast rule, but let's talk about several issues with it. Oh, excuse me. The first thing is, and this is a really, if there's any rules, this is pretty much a rule, about as far as a rule as you can get. And that is, if you have to have text explaining what's going on in the scene, you've already failed at conveying what you're trying to convey. And still might be an accurate drawing, but you've failed the concept. So assume that the viewer does not have the text. Assume that they will read no captions, nothing. All they see is the picture, is what you are intending of the image completely conveyed in just the image. If it's not, you can keep working on it. Then it's not there yet. And there might be more depth to the story, like if you have, an image of Conan the Barbarian, and he's, holding up some ogre dude or whatever, goblin or whatever, and he's slaying them all. We get the idea. Okay, he's attacking them, and it's a battle between him and these ogre goblin people, and it's going to be an action story. And now, do we know the political movement of why he did that, or what his motivations were, or what the whole story was? No. So there's a limit to how much of the narrative you can do. But here is, you would never know that. There is not enough information in this image to ever get anyone to understand that that was the situation. There is nothing in the image that would make anyone who did not know that that's what you're going for to even know that that was supposed to be an astronaut. Now, and that's not particularly difficult. And conveying that somebody is an astronaut is not that hard in art. I mean, we can just go to a couple of, old tropes of helmets and spacesuits, or just a spacesuit, or heck, maybe it's just a piece of a helmet. You don't need a lot to start to kind of convey that. But you got to have the breadcrumbs to take the viewer through the narrative, and they're not there. And this is also one of those where, if I was the company that hired you to do this and you sent it in, I'd say, okay, no. I appreciate the creativity, but this is a really clear line between, you aren't creating your image. You're creating my image. It isn't about your idea of the image. It's about you rendering the image I've already asked you to. And that's the difference. And you say, well, I don't really like that. Then maybe professional illustration isn't for you. And I don't even know that that's your goal or not. But that's what the job is. My job isn't to do my version of Jace the Planeswalker when I get hired to do it for Magic. My job is to give them a really good, well-rendered version of the person they already have. They're not asking me to reimagine him. They're asking me to do him in my way with my sense of colors and my sense of style, but also in their box. So it is, you you have to find your creativity inside of a framework. The framework has already been made. That's not your choice. Your choice is, where do you put the camera, what exact style of astronaut it is, what style of serpent, not Muppet, serpent. What style of science fiction? Is it campy, pulpy, old-timey science fiction? Is it gritty science fiction? Is it horror sci-fi? Is it fun sci-fi? But it still has to be sci-fi. You see, it's which version of what's already been outlined. So, I did an image a while back. I just want to give an example. I've got to switch over to my other screen for just a second. Pull up a file because it's another folder. Okay, so this is an image I did fairly recently for the game Smite. It was a marketing image. And that's why there's no background. They can put it, use it however they want on their marketing pieces. And this is their character, Pele. Well, Pele is already a character in the game. And they sent me images of the 3D model for me to base the design on. And it's not, and so I had to be pretty close to it. Basically had to be the same thing. But, when it got to her blades, her daggers, they were just black metal daggers that had like a orange glow, which works in the game. I mean, because they're tiny in the game. But for a nice big image like this, where the dagger is coming, fairly close to the camera, and she's the goddess of volcanoes, I thought, it would be really cool if they were actually made out of fiery lava. That'd be pretty neat. And so I sketched it up that way, and I submitted it in, and I said, hey, this is an idea. I specifically stated anything that I changed or made an iteration to from their original concept. And so I did something else to it as well. Some other small thing. I added glow around the rock pieces on her shoulders. So I said, I changed these two things. And I think they look better this way. But if that's an issue, let me know. I'll happily take them out. And they were okay with it. They thought it was fine. But even that sort of change needs to be passed by your art director. In this case, if you were coming up with this idea for the challenge, you could shoot me a message and say, hey, Clint, I was thinking about actually doing it this way with, hallucination, and they become sock puppets, and he's basically got the whole suit torn off of him. Do you think that's too far? That's how you would interact with your art director. And they'd say, yes, no, maybe, here's some other options. All right. Okay. So that's mainly, it's a whole breakdown there. And this is just one of those things of working in industry that if you are working on your own artwork, then you are free to do whatever you want. Let your creativity roam free and be happy. But if you're working for a client, that's not the same case. You're doing their image for their purpose, and they're the one that says what's right or wrong. There's a difference there. As far as how you've actually rendered it, the thing is, it's coming out really well. The energy is really nice. I like the Spidey, photo that you were kind of looking at there, and you've got that same sort of punch energy to it. You've got a good lighting sort of reference up there with your model. A lot of energy in the face. You're getting a tight crop. It's almost like to the point where it's becoming the paranoia. But we got to just go back to the concept. Okay. I went on there for a while. Did you have any additional thoughts? Did you see this from a different direction, Anna?
Yeah, I know Daniel's art, and he's often going for a very, very specific own version of things that are really hilarious and have a lot of creativity in it. And yeah, I chuckled at this one too. I totally agree on what you said. So if you're going for the challenge, try to stick to the outline and fulfill what is asked for. Um, well, but now he did this kind of approach, and I think we should have also some tips for him where he could improve this, so that he learns something out of it still.
Yeah. Now, the other ideas, and we said, okay, it's fairly open sci-fi, and you can kind of take that direction you want. So if you want to stick more this way, I mean, if you want the sock puppets, make them all sock puppets. Make them all little Muppet-esque characters, including the astronaut. Otherwise, you need to come up with a really clever idea that's very effective of letting the viewer know that those are hallucinations. I would need to sit around and think about that for a while, and that's not really my task here to answer that question for you. But it might be possible, and if you're welcome to give it a shot. If somehow you can convey, I mean, like, the only thing that I can really think of is if, like, you gave him the helmet, but instead of him suffocating, maybe there's like a gas, and like there's a, part of the helmet glass is broken, and you see like this green gas coming in, and you see his eyes kind of like getting this green color, and then all of the sock puppet eyes have that same green color. And that way you're trying to make this connection between the gas color and his eyes and the puppets. And like maybe some of the background serpent things are in there, they look normal because he hasn't actually seen them yet. But the ones right around him, like the closer they get to him, the more they look like sock puppets. And if you handed it to me and that was what I was trying to convey, that's sort of the direction I'd have to take it, so that maybe the audience would be able to follow that logic. But okay, I'll go ahead and stop there.
Mm.
And I know it is getting late for you. If you do need to take off on
No,
I completely
no
understand. Okay, next up is Raphael. And this one really hit me well. What about you? I had a good...
When I checked for the entries, I didn't see this.
That's
why I
right.
thought we are lacking some submissions. Maybe he was a little bit late or something.
It was late. That is true. Raphael, you're another one. Noon. Look at what time noon is for you. Make sure you get it in on time. If it's going to be late, and you know it's going to be late, and something like I'm in town, I can't get home to upload it, shoot me a message and just let me know, because otherwise, if it is late, there's a good chance I'm not going to see that it's in there. Just a little heads up on that. So, great use of form and really good concepts up here. And I do like the black and white with the lime, green sort of color hits on it. That's a nice way to do it. And so you were going with more of the entangling feeling. That's cool. I like these. So you're looking for not a real realistic, but a very colorful, I'm going to say like comic book sort of feel, with like shapes and stuff. Good reference photo as far as just the character there, and you've got serpent wrapping around you. Cool. So all in all, I'm digging this, but let's change around the amount in the recipe to get a little better, you know, answer final out of it. So, still working on the color studies. I'm trying to focus on the struggle and reach his weapon. Yeah, the color studies are sort of the last thing I'm concerned about at this stage. I'm more like, do we have a good concept? And have you at least thought about the lighting? Let's pull those up and kind of look at those for a second. This one had basically some sort of, it's almost like an underlight coming from the water. That's kind of cool. Or just a backlight. This is one of those scenes that doesn't need to be completely realistic. That's not really the style you're going for. So I think the line that you're going with, as far as just these, nice kind of vibrant colors, fairly ambiguous light source behind him, that's all working for me. That alone tells me I think you're on the right track. You're probably going to handle it well. One of the biggest things here is your use of shapes is really good. You're exaggerating the shapes. Like this thing's mouth, this thing's anatomy is super good. I just love a lot of things going on with that. But we also are kind of not making use of a lot of the scene. This guy's sort of redundant. He's not doing a lot. But actually, most of that and most of this really isn't doing anything for the scene. I mean, it's just not. Really, what we care about is, right, this guy, and his weapon. That is kind of the whole scene right there. So I'm going to suggest actually making those guys bigger. And, you could just get these guys. And if you get on the right layer. Oh. That back up. And just getting them a lot bigger. Like, leave this foreground guy. We need him there. He's cool. But we need to get him bigger in the scene. Taking up more of the real estate. So he can be overlapping there a little bit. We don't necessarily need all of that over there. And you can just see that it's just a better use of space there. And I mean, this is sort of like leaving room for a book title, which I guess if you're going to put a title in it, that's fine. But otherwise, I'm not even sure that you need that. You probably just cut it down there, right? The other thing is most of the stuff going on in this scene, most of the action is horizontal. And you could honestly think about using a horizontal scene. Generally speaking, if you've got, like a skyscraper, you're probably going to put it in a vertical so that you can show off the height of the building. Or if you've got a spaceship taking off, then having it going up the page, you're following the main motion. In this case, the main motion is more side to side. And so you could consider doing a composition that was more like this, where you still have this guy back here, you still have this guy in the foreground coming around. We could just lower this guy back here, still using him, and then we can actually get the right amount of distance in between his hand and the weapon. Because right now, that's not really working. Right now, he's reaching for his weapon, but like, the handle is right there. I mean, I assume he's trying to grab this dagger. And he could just grab it right there. But if we make the scene more horizontal, or if we scoot him over more, then we can put that dagger handle, another 6 inches away. I feel like he might be able to wiggle around and get some more room out of it. So then if we put the dagger handle here, oh, now it's just a little too far away. And we can play that distance up more at the horizontal scene by putting it over there. Now, talking about the weapon, I would suggest moving up to either a more impressive daggery sword or using a gun, because this is a very small object to see. And I just felt like he was struggling. It took me a moment to realize that he was trying to reach for something, because I thought it was just, oh, and his arm is kind of out. So I would consider a couple of different things in order to try and help sell that. And one is, if it was like some sort of gun, you would be able to recognize a trigger, in Gared or something like that, fairly easily. And it would be bigger, taking up a little more visual real estate, so you're less likely to overlook it. Another thing is right down here, is adding more twist to the body, where you feel like he's turning to try to reach that. So it's like we have down here, where his upper body is turning this way and his lower body is being pulled the other direction. So if his waist went back here and he had one leg here and the back leg there, then you get this sense that he's trying to turn that way to get to it. Otherwise, he's just straight forwards and his arm is out to the side. Again, one of the reasons it just looked like maybe he was in pain or something. So that would be a quick thought on that one. I did not put those all in the layer that I thought I did. Talking about readable silhouettes, this is somewhere that we could consider changing up the silhouette a little bit. Like if we could get a little white in there, like if his arm wasn't quite as closed, or if that serpent went back kind of like that, then we could get a little bit more readable silhouette out of that. That was a small thing. But a similar thing on him, this guy right here in the foreground. Like I particularly like these little army talon things. But this face silhouette isn't reading really well. This is a nice silhouette. And I feel like we got that same sort of thing back here. But why don't we go ahead and get more of that? Maybe it's not as big, but if Beastie was like beginning to open his mouth, I felt like seeing these things, big old talon things, the mandibles. I don't know. I think that's more threatening. That's a better silhouette. It reads better. It's kind of like your predator mandibles. So that would read a little better on a quick pass, having that open more. Any thoughts from you on this one? Take another sip of water.
Well, you already pointed everything out that I also. It was the knife and his pose and the arm that is not very readable in front of the other creature.
Mm-hmm.
But if he changes it to a horizontal approach, I think many of these issues are already tackled very well then.
Well, he could actually use the vertical, right? And do, instead of reaching sideways, he's trying to reach up. Like maybe his weapon is caught on one of these vines hanging down, and he's trying to reach up to grab it. And that is almost more believable that it's harder to get, right? Because it's hard. He's being pulled down, and he's trying to crank up and grab this thing. And then that's where a vertical scene would be awesome. And you could really place him further down in the water, add that foot or so in between his weapon being wrapped in the vines and then his hand trying to reach it. And then the hand grasping, that would be a great silhouette. So this is more of a pose with the hand that you would have with like dancing. This is like a nice pose, right? What we want is more of your pose where it's kind of like, and it's graspy, right? And his fingers are all kind of just trying to reach up, almost like a zombie. He just kind of got the two longest fingers there, and the other ones are starting to. He's even trying to lengthen out his fingers, his two main fingers, in order to reach it. Right, that sort of thing. Get a little more graspiness out of it. I also think maybe can we push his costume a little bit, because I feel like the serpents are actually kind of overshadowing him design wise. Yeah, as far as his suit, can we add maybe? I'm not sure really what the influence is here that you're going with the suit. Some air tanks on it, or control pads on the arms, or just give me some more interesting shapes and visual information on him to at least level up to the same degree that the serpent guys are at. Okay, long enough on that one. Excellent piece. Really looking forward to see what you do with it. All right, here we're taking a look at some work by Martinez, and he's got like the the one against many scene here, and going with more of a humanoid army. It looks like that he's fighting, but I do see the snake head. So these are some sort of snake people. Naga. I mean, it's not Naga because they don't have tail snake bodies. Anyway, that's the other direction. What was your notes on this one?
Yes, so I wrote down a very nice composition. Maybe a little bit more balancing on the left, but then I think it's a nice composition idea with a central figure and the enemy coming from every side. The 3D ref is a little bit stiff. Maybe try to do it as Fergus and the others and take your own. The brushwork even for a sketch is maybe a little bit too loose, because it's hard to make out some details for me. So but work a little bit more cleaner would be my hint there. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Some similar thoughts here. Certainly with the basic composition is working, and it's one of those that we've seen in a lot of the pieces that we've even looked at tonight. Just that sort of triangular pyramid composition, centered, and Frazetta did it a bunch of times. There we go. Frazetta did it on this one, where Conan is again just mowing his way through the fields of baddies. And that's kind of what you're going for here. But to do this one right, one of the things that we really want to make sure that we do is the heroes at the apex. Right? And we're sort of breaking it by having this one lone baddie flying through the air higher than him. So, yeah, keep with this general composition, but we might even push him up a little bit so that he's a little higher. And then we can have this guy kind of jumping, but he's jumping in this area. Right? He's jumping up towards him. He's not already higher. We want our guy on the top, and they're coming up to him. That was just a little thing with that particular composition style. Another one with the pose, where Anna, you're right. With the 3D pose can be really great because it gives you basically accurate anatomy. Everything's the right shape and proportional. And you get the right perspective, but it's not really an ideal pose. It's a kind of an awkward pose. Again, we've got this sort of X pose where there is no line of action. We've just got arm out, leg out, torso. And you can see how it doesn't feel dominant. It doesn't feel like he's moving. It just kind of feels like he's posing. And we want to go back to looking at this sort of stuff. This sort of stuff. Like this was interesting, right? Because this is a complete silhouette, but you feel the motion and you can understand what's happening by just the silhouette. So I'm going to say, keep the overall idea and let's rework his pose. So maybe he's, charging into this guy more. He's got his arm pulled back. He's ready to just plow into this thing. And his chest is kind of like this, but his leg is kind of pulled up this way, and he's coming in kind of a 3/4. Right. He's ready to just tear through this fella. And he's got legs kind of coming in more like that. Now, what do? We took a pose that was static and we pushed him over. So now we added motion. And we're having him in the middle, being imbalanced. The army of dudes is looking pretty good. I'm liking the direction they're going, and the multitude of them is pretty cool. If we push them up a little higher, it actually allows us to make a more of a steep angle, which is probably nice. And having this is really nice. The hand reaching up, that's a good one. Other things that you can do, kind of taking cues from Frazetta, which is weapons sticking in the air. You notice back here you have like this. This is that hand I was talking about, right? Oh, that grasping hand, silhouetted. That wasn't an accident. He picked that hand and made sure that there was nobody behind it so that you could get the silhouette of that hand to read. He also made sure that the silhouette of certain of these other weapons read, as well as the main guy. So I would say probably more of that. We can have more hands sticking up, and maybe some of them have rudimentary weapons. And so you consider that. I'm not sure what you're going with as far as their overall bodies. I'm going to guess that you'll probably go for like this snake people, primitive snake people on some alien planet. You may give them tails. That might help take them away from just being humans, a variation of human. Or if they have longer arms or forearms, or think of something just to take them away from human a little bit more, make them a little more reptilian. The design of the character is a little blocky. I'm not real sure what that is. He's not really reading sci-fi. He looks like a Street Fighter character. He looks kind of like Vega. I think that was the character. It's been a long time since I played Street Fighter, but I think Vega was the fellow with the triple blades. So see if we can bring him back to more sci-fi. Consider giving him a spacesuit, some sort of version of a spacesuit. Or even if you want to go like a Star Trek or Star Wars with some sort of uniform, and he's got some and he's got some sci-fi tech with him. Or if you want to approach it more like a Marvel, and okay, well, what does Star-Lord, right? He's got like the techie helmet. And so you could think about doing some sort of almost like superhero astronaut version of their suit. Take a look at that way, and maybe move it away a little bit from just the bare chest, bare abs sort of thing. Okay, is there a final thought? No.
Nope.
Oh, well, we kind of covered this stuff earlier, so I wasn't really gonna. This is just another example of kind of what we looked at. This is somebody else's, again, pulled it off Pinterest. I love tea, boring and stiff. I love tea, got more feeling to it. that the head tilts up, the shoulders go up, the hands go up. Clear poses. Again, the silhouette. Not really sure what's going on. Is she punching herself in the face? I don't know. Oh, she's drinking a bottle. Okay, very clear, and we know what's going on there. So that's what we're looking for. Nice clear silhouettes if you're going to go for a silhouette-based image. Okay, here we go with Justice Wilson. All right, let's start with your comments.
Okay, Justice here, a little bit jumping around. Where's my here? I liked at very first sight. I liked the serpent. It is maybe a little bit too detailed already for the stage of a sketch, because if he has to change a lot of things, then he will be probably sad that he lost so much time. But it's a really nice rendering. What threw me off a little bit was the connection between the serpent and his tail that is wrapped around the soldier. It just didn't fit anatomically, so it's a weird connection. And also the all over composition and the framing, because there's so much space on this that we do not need. And the third thing was, for me, why is he using his laser in the opposite direction and leading our eyes out of the painting? So he could attack the serpent with that, or use it and also trying to free himself or something like that. So these were the first three things that came to my mind.
Yeah, a lot of the same impressions that I had. Let me go ahead and read his comments here. I couldn't land on a direction for this project. I ended up going about it the wrong way as well. I sketched and then immediately started rendering. Yeah, we kind of noticed. Without giving proper time to the studies. Yeah, you did. I will be sure to do those before I go any further on the piece. Well, yeah, well, I mean, it's still worth doing them. You're not going to get quite as much out of it. You sort of locked yourself in a little bit. But, okay. Obviously, you've got rendering skills. Obviously, you can do good poses and cool anatomy and stuff. But it looks like the biggest issues you're running into is kind of just controlling yourself a little bit, and also going through at the proper pace and making sure that you are doing what you need to at each step, and making sure that each step is getting the proper attention. Because if you don't, that's what you end up with. And listen, I've done it. Everyone's done it. It's not that this is nothing unique. Every artist jumps the gun, and once, if you start drawing the snake person and it's coming out well, you're more likely to keep drawing the snake person and trying to switch to think about the background, right? It's just the way we are. So, the whole thing is, moving on from here, how do we approach it? Well, one of the first things is, it's coming really well. What you have illustrated is looking really well. And I think it has a really solid direction. And I think that you should run with that direction. You don't need to back up. At this point, get what you've got because it's working, and then design the rest of the image around it. It has this, what I consider a really fun pulp sci-fi, and you did include this image, which I was glad to see, because I was like, and it's really feeling like a pulp sci-fi cover, which works for me. And I had this one saved, and it kind of had some of the same beats to it as well. A lot of the pulp sci-fi, they don't have much in terms of background, so if you want to keep it right in that vein, that's fine. You can do something really basic. I was just thinking, like, if you want to fill the background, you might just put, like, a spaceship and some random mountains and a moon. Right? And that's kind of we're going campy with it, right? It doesn't have to be real legit. But Anna, you're right. If you're going to render it to this level of realism, we do have to also make it make a little more sense. So the tail, yeah, isn't really wrapping around in a way that makes sense because it's like it goes back and then it loops up and then it loops forwards, which actually somehow reaches the back and then comes around. So that's kind of confusing, and I would suggest probably reworking that tail so that it's doing something makes a little more sense. Like if it came out this, which makes sense, he's standing right there, then like went around his waist, that would make sense. Okay, then it comes up, and then it goes around the helmet and the neck, and then it does that sort of thing. All right, I would follow that a lot easier. It's a little more simple, and it also makes him more constrained. But beyond that is, what are we doing with the rest of this? If we're going to have him blasting a hand ray, we need him shooting that at someone. Or he needs to be trying to hold off a different beast, which I probably don't really want to cover him up too much. We can do kind of what they do here, which is crop in a lot more. Both of these, right? This needs to be cropped in a lot more. We could probably just come down to, if we're doing a horizontal scene, if you're keeping with horizontal, we'll probably just need that. We just need the heads of some more of the serpent dudes here in the foreground, this sort of thing. And we just get the idea that he's blasting somebody, right? And give this guy some sort of spear or whatever, and then you see some more spears kind of sticking out. Then we see the edge of the cliff. Then you see his spaceship, maybe back there. And you see, some more spaceships or something. Doesn't have to make a lot of sense. Can't be sci-fi. But that would at least fill out the scene in a believable sort of fashion and make use of basically what you already have. I guess the only thing you're really missing is a damsel that he's saving, but I don't know that you really want to get into all that. I do sort of like the strange, is it like magic fantasy serpent people versus the science fiction astronaut, because that's a cool that's a cool thing going on there. I'm a fan of that. You may want to think about adjusting this, like we were just looking at the silhouettes, right? And this silhouette isn't really working, because if we just look at that silhouette, it's this. It's not really understandable. So we can consider maybe adjusting that some, especially if we could get somehow a gap between the head and the neck so that we can really see the neck coming around. Or if this arm, like I don't know why his arm isn't already like trying to grab the dude. Like this arm is up here like grabbing his helmet or something. I don't know. You don't have to think about it too hard on these kinds of images. It doesn't have to make a lot of sense. But maybe he's, I don't know. He could just be back there and look menacing, I suppose. You could think about tilting the scene more, though. That's a common thing. It's putting a pretty good angle on the scene, and so you could got more of this tilt everything. Anything there spark any ideas or any more observations, Anna?
Yeah, I think what you just mentioned with the grabbing after the helmet and maybe trying to, attack him with a spear or something would make more sense for the character design also. because he seems to be fighting with both arms and his tail. So I think it would be a nice solution, but it's up to Justice what he comes up with.
You could have like another person who he's actually holding. If you're going to pulp fiction, it would be a lady. It would have to be almost have to be a lady, but you could have like another guy down here, and he's holding the helmet of this dude, who's maybe he's already been stabbed or something, and his body's kind of hanging limply there, or maybe he's fighting against it, and he's got his arms up, and he's trying to pull himself free, and his body's kind of down here, right? And so if you wanted to keep his arm in kind of a similar position, you could have him grabbing somebody else there, or make use of that hand. I think overall the lighting's probably working for what you're going for. I would actually push the retro design of his spacesuit. Right now it looks too spandexy, and that's not really what they were like as much back then. I guess the ladies probably were more in the illustrations. But like this sort of thing, the nonsensical big bands, that's kind of iconic for this sort of artwork. So you could sort of maybe putting those on there, and maybe you have a spot of something similar, along the waist, and then you probably have maybe some straps coming down, a little console on his chest with some lights and buttons on it, that sort of thing, and something else with the glass, right? Doesn't have to be this exact design, but maybe little side pieces with little antennas coming up on either side, something like that. Maybe it has like a top piece that comes down the back side, loops down the front a little bit, and it has like a little fin on it or something, and just jazzing it up a little. Okay. So, happy with that. So I think that's everything I was meaning to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Oh no, we already looked at Raphael. No, but okay, we're just doing these. All right, I know this is taking longer than I anticipated, but I'm kind of having a good time, so hopefully people don't mind, and they will just scrub through to watch the part that they want anyway. This one is from this name right here that I don't know how to pronounce. W. From W. Okay, no comments or questions on this one.
Are we looking first now because I'm a little bit slower, on white check?
I'm sorry, say
White
again?
check's piece? Yeah, okay. I thought you go alphabetically. I was on Cine's piece. So. Okay, white check's piece. Yeah. I liked the colors that he picked from the white piece. I think this can work really well with the outline. I even prefer the color study number 3 with the enemy serpents and the ranger having different colors. I think that would work even better. My second thing that I thought is, I'm not quite sure whether a horizontal piece is the right decision, because this person is standing upon a hill, and we have a really vertical composition on a horizontal framing, and that is what was my first thought, what I would change if it was my piece.
Yeah.
And the last thing that I want to quickly throw in is he has a really, really nice pose reference. You can see these this line of action very well in his body.
Right.
And he did a little bit miss to implement that line of action into his figure that he drew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, you're right. You could definitely run this as a vertical, and it would work pretty well. It looked like he did a concept up here. The third concept was more of a vertical image. But if he's doing horizontal, that can definitely work. We may actually want to pull up on it, crop in a little more. We don't necessarily need this much of the ground. So we could probably come up to, take off the outside 10 or 15%, and you're still good. And it focuses a bit more on the character. I'm with you. I sort of liked the green glows on the color study because it makes it feel like they're not on the same side. When you make his weapon and their bodies the same color, it makes an allegiance, gives a feeling of allegiance to the viewer. And so it's like he's attacking them, but they were also supposed to be on the same team. So yeah, I would change the color if you have them any distinct other color. Lighting wise, we need to find a way to make him stand out better. You have this environment reference of crystalline cave sort of thing. Now, like, they stand out because there was actually a light off screen shining down on them, right? And it's kind of lightening it up. But here, this light source is problematic. Back here, she's allowed to be dark because that background is lighter. There's atmospherics back there. And if we did the same sort of thing, it would actually work with yours. If that background had some atmosphere light in it, it could still probably register as a cave because all the brightest light would be up front. But he'd stand out better as a silhouette, right? And you just kind of treat it as if it's some sort of foggy light, something on that way. And the pose, yeah, it's thinking the same thing. If you look at this pose, I don't know why this thing keeps drifting. It keeps thinking I'm holding the button down when I'm not. This pose has a really good line of action right here. Probably both of these, it only splits. It's got this sort of thing going on with it. And then this is sort of secondary. This doesn't really match at all. So we shouldn't use that. If anything, we should be following something more on that line. And yours isn't really using that. We need to get a lot more of this out of it. That sort of thing. If you're going with that pose. I'm not real sure that's the best option for the pose because that arm isn't very useful. The other thing is we probably want to do away with this kind of light source. That light is the brightest, most vibrant, sharpest kind of shape in the image, and it's not the subject. That's why it becomes a problem. It really keeps pulling me to it, and all it does is draws my eye straight off the page. It's not what we want. So, options. What are some other options? Okay, well, if we want to keep this basic pose, but you're going to go back into it, like if you look at this, like look at the angle of your hips right there. Look at these hips. They're literally going the opposite direction. That's why it looks like you're just kind of laying back, right? We don't have that angle. Also, look at the angle of the chest. How much curvature there is to that chest. It's really foreshortening. Let's clear that for a second. On this chest, like if you were to draw through it, and which you can't do when you're using the eraser, you were to draw through it, you know, it's doing this sort of thing. And yours isn't. It's fairly normal. So we want to really get, this can be other, big bicep. But then what about this hand? Well, he can still have his arm out here, right? But maybe it's curled more like this. Oh, he's he's Schwarzenegger now. But he could have his big gun thing more like this. And instead of a bright light beaming down, we need to have another light source. And it could be, I was thinking it could be a couple of different things. But I'm going to put Anna on the spot. What are some other solutions for a light source if you didn't have the beam for the light source? Or she's not there, and we will forego that question.
Oh, it was a question to me. I thought it was a question to the audience. I'm sorry.
Question to you. If you
No.
weren't going to use the beam for the light source because it's just so bright, it's sort of distracting, what could you do?
But you still want to keep the beam, or you can
No,
we...
we're going to take the beam out. It's just too bright.
Yeah.
It sort of leads you off the scene.
Yeah. Well, when you look at Kaisa, she also has this glowing attack around her, so it doesn't have always to be a beam. It could be smoke coming out of it because she just shoot it that is still glowing.
Ooh.
Her armor could glow. Yeah.
Yeah, those all work. So let's talk through some of those. You could have just whatever is going on with the weapon. Some of the weapon gear has kind of a brightness to it, which you can put down like a nice pure tone and then just put straight white right on top of it. And then you could have, other places in the armor. There could be lines in the armor that have designs sort of built into them, the lights built into them, right? And that even helps to tell the form once you get the form cleared up. But if he has a weapon, which I'm going to say refine these weapons, make it more like a hand that has, guns around it, or he's holding a gun, because the fin thingy doesn't really make sense. Yeah, it's not weapon-like. So yeah, well, let's go ahead and scrub that. And so yeah, if he had been shooting the gun and probably putting it at that other angle we talked about, right? It's more downwards, or maybe it's upwards, and he just finished shooting it, or he's got it here and he just shot that thing. But either way, wherever it is, you can have the smoke kind of coming out of it, and the smoke right there by the end of it is going to be colored because it's actually still being lit by the hot stuff inside, right? Hot barrel. It is something on that lines with that kind of coming out. Or you see, and I was just watching a sci-fi movie the other day, and on there, which would allow you to do, these kind of light beams sort of come off. Might not want them this bright. I'm sort of just trying to show you. But it could be that sort of thing that would be enough to actually start giving a bit of atmosphere and brightening up, the area. On that way, again, think about having him in an actual action pose, where he is jumping, swinging, pushing, being pushed, instead of feet planted. There is an option similar to the first concept up here, where he doesn't have to be moving, but it has to be, he's just similar to what you already have here. He is still standing. He's bloodied. His armor's broken. His weapon's broken. But he's just turning his head. No, he's turning around and he's looking straight in the camera. You see the blood across his face, but he's still alive. He won. And then you just have this mass of dead serpent things around him. Then you don't need to have him moving. But otherwise, he should probably be moving. Okay, what was your comment there?
Yeah, that I did with the crystal cave. You could also make it a crystal cave with the crystals glowing or something. It would add a little bit to the story why that person is in that cave. So maybe there is something very valuable that he is looking for.
That can definitely work. You could have some sort of crystalline structure, and if you're pulling them out like this, you could have a fun composition where it's kind of the radiating lines from the bottom, with him essentially serving as the top point. And you could make some of those lines that hide them, and then where did my elliptical? Maybe you want a different color. You have some like glowing. Yeah, something on that lines can be kind of neat. If you wanted to, you keep them in the same color scheme. You could keep them in a different color scheme. You could have some sort of cool like mist coming off of them. Like maybe they were super cold, and there's like mist, kind of pulling off of them, and playing around with the mythos. Maybe these things get around them to get cold, or maybe they're hot. And then steam that comes off of these crystals, they radiate heat, and the serpent things like the heat. If you can sort of expand out the idea and the narrative in your head, it might help you make some of the decisions of what should be going on in the scene with it. Okay, let's close that one. Next up is Tyler Vale. It says, geez, these last 2 weeks flew by. A whole lot wrong with this, and nowhere close to where I want to be with it, but I'd rather submit it. Oh, excuse me. All right, so my thoughts here was that it looks kind of like a book cover with the amount of space over the head. Otherwise, not a lot of reason to have that much space up there. And this is a similar issue as a lot of the other ones. Same sort of things going on here with planted feet, spread arms. This is what, the third or fourth image? We've had planted feet and spread arms. Again, we've got to get out of that. We've got to make him moving. Like if you look at, Conan here, look at the motion going on with that body. He's in the middle of this massive turn of his body. He's just really cranked back with that axe because he's on a lop somebody's head off. That's Conan. So that's not what we have here. We have a guy that's literally just standing there with two guns sticking out. And we've got to get him twisting. This is one of the things that I was told by Ian McKegg in a little class that he gave. Is it's like the simplest thing that you can do that will give you the most impact out of your poses is have twisting. So have the upper body going this way, have the upper body going that way, whatever it is, have the lower body doing the opposite. Not real complicated. You have that a little bit, but if you had the upper body doing this and then turn this way so that this leg was down and then this leg was running backwards, and then you have head facing more this way, and then you have him charging, right? We don't want his feet directly under him. We don't want him steady. We want him imbalanced. Normally I tell people, make sure that the ankles are directly underneath the line of the weight so that they're evenly planted, so that they're carrying the weight correctly. Normally, yeah, for static images. That's not what we've got here. So wherever the weight is, make sure that both feet are on one side of it or the other side of it. That would be a simple way of making sure that you've got something going on there. Same thing that we looked at the other one. If we're going to be doing a Rosetta style centered hero, we can't have somebody else bigger and taller than them. Right? Now it's, this composition is completely different. So yeah, it's fine that he's up and big and you've got this guy down here. But for this one, we've got to make sure that we have him and he's probably like this. And then if he's there, then we want to make sure that that moon is either there behind him or behind him that way, but not right over his head. And then we've got to have the guy coming up towards him. And we probably want to add more of them. Just overwhelm this sucker. Really unlikely he's going to make it out of there. Right? And we've got to probably have 3 or 5 of them coming around him. Okay, so let me pause there. Insights or observations on that one, Anna?
Yeah, so I totally agree with you. One more thing that I thought while looking at the painting in comparison to the sketch is that it might just be just me, but did he lower the angle of did he heighten the angle of the perspective? Because on the sketch it looks a little bit more like we are looking from below on the character, and I like that, to be honest, because it is much more depth, and the difference between the foreground and the background. And on the painting, everything is a little bit more flattened out and on the same height. I changed that back. So maybe even make it even more lower the angle, so that we really look with the first attacking creature up to him, and he's shooting down on us or something like that.
Yeah. It does look like he probably intended it to be that way. And it's one of those things that if you're drawing something that's you're looking at it slightly upwards and you keep working on it, eventually it's going to be straight. Just your mind and your eyes will automatically start adjusting things to be normal. That's why you got to have a really good reference to it. And your reference is pretty good, but make sure that I would say even go further than that. I'm with you, Anna. More extreme would actually serve well in this case. And one of the biggest telltale sign, belts. They'll get you every time. People are so used to drawing belts that curve down. But you don't curve down when you're looking up at them. They curve up. Gotta make sure that belt is curving up. And that takes intentional work. Because the moment that you make that belt curve down, your brain says, oh, I know what perspective this is. And it starts automatically adjusting everything else to match it. And that doesn't match anything else in your image. So make sure if you're doing an upward pose like this, what you really want to do is establish that. Make sure that you've got the curvature of any kind of belt thing at the right curve, establish it right away so that there is no doubt about it. The other thing, you might really want to put a basic shape in here for the chest to remind you what is going on with this chest. Right? Now we're getting a sense of what this is doing. In this case, I'm not saying this is the right pose that you should use, but it'd be following this. Think about what the contour lines are because we're looking up at it. We're still looking up at it, right? Contour lines. Everything should be going up, up, up. Chest is really foreshortened. And that's something else. We're treating the chest as if it's almost flat and it's just turned away. It's not flat. It's curved. So that this line could be up here. And it's really flattened out this way. And it's dropping back. It's coming out again. Dropping back. Down again. And it also has this curve. It's not flat. This curve to it. Curve to it. Curve to it. Going around his form. Okay. Oh, I was going to talk about color a little bit. You did get as far as doing some color work on this, and you did some color variations, so I want to talk about that. Oh, and then I saw up here when I was looking at these, it kind of made me think. Other way. We want the rings to go that way. Right? We've got this. And we also we're looking up the scene. When we're looking up this scene, and then we're looking down on the rings. Which I suppose, you could do planets and all that. But it would be more consistent as if we were looking up at the rings. And they could even be more exaggerated than that. It could be more like this. Right? Yeah. That's cool. Color-wise, I wanted to look at this. This is an extract from my ebook on colors, part of the mood course that we were talking about at the beginning. 3 paradigms in color schemes and palettes. Color palettes and color schemes aim to achieve one of 3 objectives: harmony, contrast, or colorfulness. Achromatic, that is one single color, black and white, and monochromatic is one color. And analogous schemes all aim to achieve visual power through harmony. Everything is like. It's very similar. It's one color. It's one color family. Do not mistake harmony for positivity, however, as something can be harmoniously peaceful or harmoniously terrifying. Whatever it is, it's all in. Complementary, split complementary, rectangle, and discordant, I'll pull out, you can see those down here, are contrast-based. They want to create visual impact through a clash of colors and use that innate discord to reflect the emotional, psychological, or physical conflict occurring in the scene. Triadic and square schemes are more concerned with just being colorful. This is more common in subjects geared towards children. Triadic color schemes were popular choice for the old comic book characters. Superman was red, blue, and yellow. Colorfulness is often prioritized in children's materials to date over harmonious and contrasting schemes, as children respond more to saturation than anything else. Be aware that the more colorful you go with your image, the wider range of colors, the harder it can be to create rich, color-based emotion in the scene. You're just working with too many colors, it's too hard to keep a handle on all of it. So, in your color practices, it's not just using different colors. That's not necessarily what we're looking at. We're looking at using different schemes of colors, trying to achieve something by a different means. Is that monochromatic? That is, it's one color. Okay, well, these are notes of what those things, those sort of color schemes are usually good for. Analogous is kindred or like-minded. Good or bad, it says one thing. Make sure it's the right thing. Complementary, it usually creates tension and opposition because it's two completely opposite colors on the color wheel. Split complementary, it's balanced but tension. It's not a direct, it is purple is usually across from orange, but we're not going with orange, we're going with yellow, green, and warm yellow. So that's a good option if you don't want a direct, attack. These are just colorful. That one's kind of tricky to do because you're basically using everything. Rectangle is colorful, but it has tension because you're using two different sides of the color wheel. So it's like complementary, but you're using each adjacent on either side instead of the center ones. And discordant is basically everything is black and white, and you have one pop color, and that could be blood red, right? Everything's basically gray except that one pop of red. Just the blood, just the red light, just the fire, that sort of thing. So play around with those and see what's working. You're probably looking at complementary, split complementary, or a red-based analogous color scheme, or a very gray-based analogous scheme, like you might see in a lot of war films. Really desaturate war movies and battle scenes. So similar thing there. What about you? Looking at the colors, kind of looking at the options. Any thoughts about how you would suggest taking this?
Well, the ones he has now are quite complementary, I'd say. And I liked the second version he did because the surroundings look a little bit unrealistic, more like really a different planet with all that green. And yeah, the one that he picked now for us, the third one, is a little bit more earth toned.
Yeah.
So like it would be on our planet. So I like the more alien approach. But he definitely could try to go for some other color schemes and play around. Yeah, maybe he finds something even better.
Okay. I'm with you. I forgot to note it on here, but that was one of my original observations. Was it felt too much like Earth? The colors, just the blue sky. One of the best ways to immediately make something feel alien, as far as environment, is change the color of the sky. Blue is inherently Earth. Green, pink, red, those, yeah, we get a little bit of some of that in the right circumstance, but our skies aren't generally speaking that color. I do have to also make a note of a lighting thing that I see mistakes. I've even seen this mistakes in movie before, but I'm gonna note it because you guys are gonna be smart about this. You're gonna understand. A planet in a sky can never be darker than the sky. Can't. Not the way it works. That's not how atmosphere works. Only that which is lighter than the sky can show up in the sky. The base of the sky, okay, what's behind the sky? Space. Space is what color? Jet black. Ain't nothing there. So we've already established what black is. Black's maximum darkness is this blue right here. Is sky blue or green, whatever you decide to make it. And so I'm using a lighten layer and I'm painting with the sky. Only that which is lighter can show up. The only way this does not apply is if that planet is literally within the atmosphere of this planet, which I don't think you can make that work, but maybe you can somehow, physics-wise. And I'm not saying we have to be completely literal, but it is a mistake. Like this one's wrong. This, unless that's floating inside of the planet, this needs to be like this. You never see the moon darker than the sky around it. You can see the moon during the daytime, a lot of times, but you never see it darker than the sky around it. You only see it lighter. This is the way it always works. Same thing with this. That planet can't show up like that. Okay, well, let me change that. One, if it has an atmosphere, there you go. That was the other option. If it has an atmosphere, it has to behave like this. You have clouds, I was assuming it has atmosphere. If it has no atmosphere, like the moon, then you can have it that way. Except if there is no atmosphere, it's not going to be blue. It's going to be black because it's just going to be space, right? So if it has atmosphere, it can't be darker than the atmosphere, or whatever the sky is. If it doesn't have an atmosphere, then the sky just needs to be black anyway, unless you have, like a nebula or some sort of nebula or light source or a sun or gas cloud or something, going on in the space that makes it bright enough that a planet could show up against it. So, okay. That was just a thing on that. I watched some B sci-fi movie where they made that mistake and I was like, so now you know. All right, moving past Tyler's, we have, I think the last one we're looking at is Cine. And the comment down here said, so I did about a dozen sketches and picked this one because I thought it had what was asked. I am out of my comfort zone doing a concept like this. I haven't checked the perspective and lighting yet, and the character is just a rough sketch. So, yeah, I'm with you. I think it's right in line and fulfilling basically what was asked for the location. There are some suggestions I'm going to make, but yeah, I'm with you. It's generally doing what it needs to do. So what was your thoughts or notes on this one, Anna?
So I also like the very first impression really much. So it has a nice atmosphere, and I like the lights that are inside the house. Because of the perspective, there were slight changes would already fix it. There's not too much to be fixed, in my opinion. I'm not the best at perspective either. What I'd like to have pushed further is, for me, at this stage, it looks more like a house a person is living in and not a shop. It needs a little bit more, I don't know, signs or some items or stuff or anything that shows it this is a place where items are sold. And for the character, even if it's just a sketch, the person could use it more to improve the storytelling. So maybe making him getting some items out of a boat that he just got delivered, just add some more story into the painting, using the character, not just placing it there for scale. Yeah, that were my first impressions.
Yeah, that was my general impression too. I'm loving the feel of it. I'm getting the very great swampy vibe off of it. The warm light, you're going with that sort of low lit. It's either twilight or this swamp is just so overcast and dark. That nice warm light is very inviting. But yeah, it feels like a house rather than a shop. And it can certainly be both, but we do need to add the shop, part into that as well. So we need some tables, we need some items, we need some more color This should be a somewhat fun place. Like, you know, we're talking about this being an adventure game. The adventurers have been slogging their way, dealing with all kinds of denizens of the swamp, probably for days and days, and they finally arrive at this place, and it's got color, and it's got refreshments, and it's got cool items that they can buy. And we want to sort of give a bit more of that. So looking at this guy like over here, and oh yeah, that actually reminds me. I think I downloaded some other, but I didn't put them in here. No, I was putting like the people one in. Oh, I downloaded some other images. I really meant to pull those up. Hang on, let me pull those up because it would be relevant for you. I put those somewhere. Oh, I've been changing how I set up some of my files. And yeah, okay. Let me switch back over. Okay, so I started adding some more files to this folder. And like I came across this one. This was a charming little design right here. And I think this has some of the stuff that you're sort of doing with yours, where it has like the big grass roof and part of it's wood. And he's got like the little stove and the little fans and stuff. And he had inspirations from the Hobbiton area there. And there was another one that was like a shop here. Yeah. So this is a Frog of Magic. That's the name from ArtStation. And this is more of what we need, right? As far as adding some of these things into your scene and having the little wares all sitting around. The flowers are actually kind of a nice touch. It lightens it up a little bit. Having colorful lanterns, having some different draped fabrics. I'm going to say go out and look at some of these images and see about incorporating some of those ideas into your scene. The lily path, I love this. I love this person's art. It's fantastic. I want to try something along that lines. There were some other ones, not the same sort of swampiness, but they had, this is somebody else. They did like a forge, right? And that was kind of cool. So with yours, yeah, playing up that aspect of it and having more shop wares, more color, maybe some more fabrics hanging around. But I'm going to suggest changing this roof. It's very kind of just dull shape. And you've got this fantastic curvy roof up here on this concept. This thing's neat. It's different. It's kind of iconic. And it goes along with the turtle feeling. It's almost like a big shell. And it kind of would make sense that a turtle would have a big roof like that. So I'm going to suggest going back towards that idea of having the curvy roof that does that sort of thing. And I think that would be more unique. And then maybe you have another one coming off like that, and you have like a series of them. And so you have the green up there. Or if you do it like his, then, whatever the brown shingles are underneath it, but there's a thickness to them, right? We're just adding some more interesting shapes to it. That also allows us, like if we're going to do some of the Warcraft things, right? We can accentuate it by having like some beams sticking out along here. If you want to do it that way. And You could even have like a little windows, like these little windows here. You could add like little windows, almost like a little face. Oh, that okay, that's kind of cool. I'm sort of a fan of like he's got like little eyes in his shop. He goes like this. Gotta do that. And it's like a big mouth. How could you not stop at a shop like that?
It's really cute.
So you got that. Oh no! And then what you do is you have to have a red stripe like it's a tongue. It comes out like this.
Clint. You're getting carried away
This is
again.
now my favorite concept. And then you have like little red ones like this. Yeah, I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna be doing more environment, locations, drawings, and stuff. I've been doing characters for so long, and I honestly really enjoy doing some of this stuff. So something like that would be really fun. You could have like the little glowy lanterns that he has up in the eyes, so the eyes glow. Yeah, I mean, like that. I mean, you're gonna have a lovely piece with this, and then just adding in more wares and stuff. Oh, we did need to talk about the perspective for a moment. So. Yeah, this is, like I said, usually it's more important just to get the concept down until you find a concept that you like, and then you can refine the perspective. But one thing to be aware of is if one side is straight, like in this case, this front side of this porch is straight, and the front side of this is straight, the front side of this is straight. The other side cannot be angled, because the only way something is straight is if it is going away from you in a perfect orientation. Otherwise, it has to have an angle. And we can see that with these. Let's take a look at this guy. A really, really nice piece. So we have this angle coming down, but then that angle has to go back. Now, it's not perfect. It's not angled much. That's the difference of the angle right there. It's not much there on the bottom, but we also are at eye level on that one. We're a little higher up on this one. So what we're likely to see is this, where it's a bit more like that, right? Bit more here. And because of your angle, because we're not at eye level, we probably want to go ahead and just run some perspective lines. We're going to say that our eye level is right about here. Seems, I'm guessing, right about that area. And our perspective for this porch, where do you want to put it? Out here? Like that? That kind of tells you here. And then that's going to be way off that direction. It's going to be off some like that. So you would need to run those out. Or you could just try to guess it. But if you guess it, then you do need to put an angle. Let's not have this straight across. Let's have this angled back. I think it would be more interesting if you actually staggered them some more. Oh, I didn't mean to hit that. So if we angled this back a little more, this porch can be like this. That's cool. But then this porch is at a different angle, intentionally. So it's staggered out a little bit. And then his steps sort of connect down. And then this one is at a different angle. And it's all a little whoppy jaw. And his steps kind of have to do this odd little thing where it connects like this. And so it's all sort of, you know, if you saw it from the top, you know, you've got this sort of thing going on with the different pieces like this, rather than having everybody straight in line like that. Yeah, it feels a little more organic this way. Also, I would probably cut down on some of the lights back up here and maybe some of these windows. Having one or two windows, but having like window, or probably just 3, probably not 4 of them. You can just go with 3. And then thinking on these with this one. Going with, make sure that you're getting more of this sort of thing with the roots, right? These big, bumpy, gnarly sort of roots. A lot more interesting. So letting them do this, right? And it goes around a big spot there. Then this piece sort of comes around there. Then there's a big bump thing here. And you want to give the idea that this thing is just grown up around in these big knots. And then you sort of tuck a little window away in there. And the roof of it, the window and its little roof are manufactured, right? And then the rest of it is just the tree, hollowed out, I suppose. And it could have the same sort of thing. That if you're running with this curvy roof that we were looking at, happy little portal roof, then we want to do a similar sort of thing where we're letting these little guys have that same outward curve to them with the window inset, right? And then we can have similar to what we have here, same sort of thing, that some of the greenery starts hanging down. So even on this one, we can have vines and grasses sort of doing this. Yeah. And they start kind of hanging off. You can have these, but maybe they're pretty. Pretty flowers on them or something. Yeah. I think that about covers it here. Any final comments?
No, I really liked the concept you you did here with the little frog. Maybe just the upper part now looks very organic and has many round shapes. Maybe he should also take this further on the steps and each level, because it looks very straight and very sharp in comparison to the very round and organic forms on top. It's just a personal preference. What do you think about that?
Yeah, you could definitely go into it like with more of a consistent, like here we have the curvy, actually a little dock area from the earlier concept, and you could definitely run with that, where the docks are actually curved and the stairs are kind of curved rather than them being, very straight. But you could also run with the man-made things are very straight. The boards, the planks, but the roofs and the tree thing are all organic. But if you also add more organic things like plants around on the, if you have more like plants and vines sort of coming up on some of the posts, maybe growing up along the edge of some of the platforms, it'll blend itself into the environment a little bit. It won't be as much of an issue. The main thing is, let's get more of the shop feeling in there. Make it a little more fun, a little more colorful. This is a cheerful fella. And, thinking about maybe playing around with that roof a little bit, some of the big curves to it. You don't have to follow the way that I've set it up here with a little face, but you're welcome to if you want to. So, to wrap it up, thank you, everyone who has participated, and I feel like I should send you a gold star if you've survived and watched the entire live stream. Wow, I would be seriously impressed if anybody that sits around and watches this long. But, well, thank you for joining me. And we should be back on next week. We will not be reviewing submissions. We'll probably be doing either a draw-along episode, or we'll be looking at a lottery portfolio and doing paint-overs with that. And, of course, if you have questions, you feel free to shoot them to me. I will probably log them during the week to discuss them next week. If you want any more materials by me, they're available at swatchesart.com. And if you like this video, if anything that I've said you thought, man, that's a cool idea, I'll have to remember that, leave a thumbs up, give it a like. But if you don't like it, just make sure you unlike it twice. Well, Anna, thank you for joining me. I appreciate you being on. I appreciate your insights and your thoughts as well.
Thanks for having me.
And you can catch both of us out on the group. I think that's it. So, until I see you next time, guys,
Bye.
keep drawing.